what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
Hey, what do you guys think about this Jared? He's right?
No, he's pretty sharp.
Yeah, he did that no one else in the house can do.
Yeah, but he's a know-it-all. I mean, I don't think there's room in here.
Well, there will be after Richard gets rid of Big Head. He's a lightweight at everything. Brings nothing to the table.
But he's a great guy.
Great guy, but useless.
Yeah, he is a great guy. Not like that Jared. At least we can all agree on that.
Excuse me, I'm gonna go take my throne, cause I'm a shoo-in for Hate of the Year. Excuse me.
I hate that.
I hate you. I hate you. I don't even know you. And I hate your guts. I hope all the bad things in life happen to you and nobody else but you.
She hates me.
Who? Nah, she's just hating me. You're getting like the overflow.
You think?
Yeah, I'm really the star of her hate. You're at best co-hated.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
Hey, what's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like live right here on Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Very happy to be your host. Please, right out the gate, jump on in and invite others to join you. We've got a lot to get to. So big shout out to Josh and Aaliyah helping us out, part of the crew here. I hope I'm just making sure. I think everything sounds good. Everything's working good, working well. Anyway, there's a lot I want to get into today, and I don't honestly trust my computer to get to it all. So I want to get right into it, and I'll come back later on and do all the proper welcomes and thank yous and all of that. Again, shout out to Josh and Aaliyah. Big thanks to all of you who are here already and who will be joining us. Good morning, greetings to all of you. I do want to come back to that. So please forgive me, but I've been working on some issues all weekend, and I'm not confident. I'm just not confident. But I do want to just quickly say that, just getting to all the stuff here, that please do, and first of all, thanks to all the patrons and members of the channel, and please do, if you haven't already, check out the recently dropped special episode for patrons and members, and give your thoughts and feedback. Invite others to join so they can see it as well. I just dropped in the chat, and I'll drop it later, but we set up a Discord for the show. The link is in the chat, and we'll put it in there again. So please sign up and jump in. And I think some of you have been asking for that for a while. So at least we have one for this show, and we'll see, just trying it out. So I don't know if I did it all correctly. So we'll, anyway, so please check that out. And, Okay, so some of you may have seen, and I had to change the graphic a couple days ago in the show. Adolph Reed was set to join us this morning. Was not able to make it, so we've invited him back. And if it works out, it works out. I don't know what happened, but right after reconfirming, his assistant or whoever he's working with contacted me right back almost immediately. Said my bad for doing that, but we have to cancel. So, but as I told them, and I want to invite all of you, we now have not only this new Discord, and again, the link is already in the chat, but if you want to come on the show or think you have a suggestion for the show, again, to help me, I've asked Josh and Aaliyah to help out, and they've been kind enough to agree. So please email I mix what I like booking at Gmail, and we can, help organize all of that, because it's honestly, I'm not gonna front, it's just I've never liked doing it. Even back when I used to do radio, the booking was just such, it's time consuming. And then when you're trying to prepare a show and then people cancel and whatever, I mean, I get it, but it's just, so anyway, I'm very grateful to have them helping is my point. So please do, I mix what I like at Gmail. I mix what I like booking at gmail.com. A couple people sent this to me, and I've been subscribed already to the channel, and something I want to come back to just very quickly. The channel FD Signifier, the brother did a video on how Drake killed hip hop, and something it's a very nuanced video. It's very good, very interesting. But where we do disagree, I just want to quickly point out that I don't agree with his conclusions. Hip hop hasn't been given away to commercialism and capitalism by any particular generation. I just think we have yet to understand properly the colonial relationship that we have, and the function in that relationship that hip hop and pop culture play. So I put in the description to this show again my argument around C. Dolores Tucker, and I would like to come back to that. I mix what I like, a mixtape manifesto. I think it tries to address this as well. But, and I was just actually talking about this with my daughters this weekend. From the very beginning, what we understand as recorded industry, hip hop has been a capitalist function and corporate tool, from Sylvia Robinson to today. And I'm not blaming a Black woman for doing it, but she took advantage of the situation to the best of her ability. So from day one, hip hop has been a commercial corporate product. Once Sugar Hill Gang and all that got involved. So anything up to that point is very different, very natural, very, very potentially revolutionary. But from then on, so it's not that Drake did anything different. Anyway, all right, but let's get into something. But to move on and just sort of set, so because I've tried to reorder what I was going to do today, and there's a lot. We have a lot of contradictions, as I sort of titled the video for today. I don't know that I'm going to be in any best flow or arranged order, because I'm trying to get to the clips early so that I'm to get them out of the way before the computer starts to do its sunsetting, as some have argued the current president is experiencing. And I don't mean to make light of that. In fact, personally speaking, is something we're dealing with in our family. It's not the best thing in the world to have to deal with, but just as a light little joke relative to my computer situation. But so let me start with this, and what I want to sort of, and I'm glad to be starting with this, because I think it actually sort of sets the tone properly for what I want to get to today. And it's from our dear sister Jackie Lukman in one of her recent programs with Dr. Linwood Tawheed. And I just want to play a couple of clips from their discussion, because what they remind us of about the economic condition we're facing is relevant to a lot of the conversation that I want us to get to today. So I want to start here, right here. Let's do it.
Move in Jeff Bezos's direction,
right?
Because folks, have a lot more weight than on that side than on the side that we're on. And so the mean can be very deceptive because the average person doesn't have anything near approaching
between
Jeff
understanding
Bezos'
income and wealth and mean
wealth.
and median.
But so the median is usually taken as more representative. Okay. And so when we look at these survey of consumer finances, or there have been other data sets that have been used, we find that there is about an 8-to-1 ratio of median net worth between Black families at the 1 and white families at the 8. And so one recent report put the average household, this is wealth by household, the median household wealth of whites at about $170,000, and the median household of Black families at about $17,000. That's a 1 to 10-to-1 ratio. This report puts it at 8-to-1, but it's consistently around between 8-to-1 and 10-to-1 that white families have a net worth, assets minus liabilities, that is what's clear out of that, of about 10 times what Black families have. And if we look at, let's say, the survey of consumer finance, which I think starts at about 1989, I believe, was the first year that was done. We find that gap is widening every year. It's getting larger every year. And so that wealth gap is not decreasing between Blacks and white. It is increasing. And there's some reasons that we need to talk about why that's increasing, because there have been some solutions to closing that wealth gap that have been proposed by various persons that actually will have no effect on closing the gap, might slow down the widening of the gap, but the gap is going to continue to grow because it's already so large.
All right, so that's
Right.
that's
So
one place I wanted us to start real quick. And the point again being that the wealth gap between Black and white is widening. All right, something we've been talking a lot about here for years, covering for years, but just as a good reminder, as an update from a more professionally trained economist, in a great conversation with Jackie Lukman that I would encourage everybody, if you haven't seen, to go and check in its entirety. And there's one more clip from that discussion I want to play very quickly as well before we move on. And here we go.
2018, that's $22.65. That means that the average hourly wage today, in terms of what it can buy, is less than it was in 1974. Because there's a difference in what we call nominal wages, what people are making in terms of their hourly wage. The minimum wage is $7.25. The minimum wage had kept up with inflation from the time it went to $7.25. It would be somewhere around that $22 an hour, right? But it hasn't kept up with inflation. So wages have actually All
right, so hold on. I understand there's an echo. Is the echo with me or? But so Josh says there's an echo. I see people in the chat saying that the sound is weird and that there's an echo, but it's fixed. I'm not sure what. Let me just double check over here. Yeah, there shouldn't be. It's the YouTube video. Yeah, that shouldn't be. Oh, that's terrible. The playback. Let's see. Let me just check something here. Because I don't hear a thing. It sounds great over here. If anything, just a little low. I'm just gonna go ahead and let's see. Let me start it again and see if that changes anything.
This in terms of their purchasing power, which is what the title says. The average hourly wage is able to purchase less now than it could 50 years ago.
Oh my
wages have stagnated. Now, that doesn't mean that productivity has stagnated.
Right.
Because there's a very famous diagram that shows that productivity.
All right, how was that? That was actually all from the clip I wanted to, it's the video, but the video sounds fine. And I'm not sure what. Oh man. Yeah, I honestly don't know. I've been working with this stuff all weekend and thinking I got stuff fixed, and I'm not. But again, over here, yeah, over here, I don't understand. It should be good. Anyway, well, yeah, but Josh, people in the chat are saying they're hearing it too. So I'm not really sure what's going on. But anyway, that was all I wanted to play from that video. So we got more clips to get to, so we'll see if we can work it out from there. But the 2 points that I wanted to make sure that were clear was one, no, I know, I get it, that, and I see folks saying that I'm clear, I sound fine. Yeah, that, but even the video should have, that's just all, yeah. Anyway. Okay. By the way, if anybody knows anything about OBS Studio and working it out with a Mac, please let me know. That took up most of my weekend and we got nowhere, and I ended up having to abandon it for the show. I thought I had a lot of things figured out, and then it went away. So I'm happy to if anybody understands or is good with OBS Studio and wants to offer up some free contributed advice, please contact the show, because I think I've exhausted my capabilities and patience, and anywho, but yeah, so anyway, those were the 2 points I wanted to get to from at least for today, from Jackie's show. And again, I like some of you, I think I saw in the chat, were saying it's great that Dr. Tawhid is going to be a regular guest there, and that as he said, one, the gap is widening. The black-white wealth is gap is widening, or closing at a rate that is, indistinguishable, largely. And then the other is that production has gone up, but wages have stayed stagnant. And as we and others have talked about for a long time, obviously they use the credit card and other things to fill the void. And all the increased wealth has just gone to the upper 10th of a percentile, who have used it to, in large part, further capture public policy and continue things to their benefit. Oh, by the way, quick announcement, speaking of all of that, that I forgot to mention off the top, is that Friday morning after my show, I'll be joining the brothers of the Gentlemen of Crypto on their platform. So not much crypto on this show today, because I know some folks have been a little bit disappointed, feeling I've gone too far into that. Though I still think it's relevant, anyway. But I'll be debating them on their platform Friday morning at a little after 10 a.m. when we leave here. So, feel free to check that out. And yeah, it should be interesting. All right, so that was the one thing.
Welcome back to Black News
with those clips to sort of set us again, to get some of these clips done before my computer completely falls apart, but also because and I just feel like I'm in a very weird position with that, because on the one hand, we really can't afford right now for me to get the improved tech that I need. But at the same time, I am gainfully employed, so I wouldn't want to do what others. Anyway, never mind. Let me just stop that. Let me just get back to business. I keep distracting myself. Anyway, so but to continue with these clips, a little bit admittedly disjointed in terms of the ordering, but I did want to make sure I got these in before, again, my computer fully collapses. But I saw this discussion on the Black News Channel, Marc Lamont Hill, and I wanted to play at least a little bit of this with Patrisse Cullors, who was back on talking the other day about a forthcoming project, which I again think speaks to a lot of the contradictions I'm seeing in what I want to, in the thread of today's show is the many contradictions. So starting with what could be the claims of an improved situation and an advance, or claims that there are people in position doing the work needing to be done to address the situation we find ourselves in. I think Dr. Tawhid and Jackie sort of set us off nicely with, no, things are getting worse. We're not headed in the right direction. All right. So then to this, we hear a little bit.
Tonight, while many social justice advocates work within the established
and I hope the audio
social structures to achieve gradual change, there are others who dare to advocate for a completely reimagined, radically reorganized system altogether. These activists are calling for abolition. And now there's a new book by a well-known abolitionist charting an easy-to-follow framework for everyday activists to fight for a new reality.
So first, I thought this was new. Like, they go into a longer conversation that we're not going to get to, but I thought, I've not heard, again, I don't follow them like that, but I don't remember hearing a lot from Patrisse and that initially about abolition. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on that, but I thought this was an interesting return for her.
Penned by the co-founder and former executive director of Black Lives Matter movement, Patrisse Cullors. An abolitionist handbook offers relatable teachings on the history of abolition and how it can be used in our everyday lives as a source of collective care. Cullors asks us to lead with love, fierce compassion, and precision. Joining me now is the New York Times best-selling author and artist, Patrisse Cullors. My sister, good to see you, Patrisse, as always.
Oh, it's so good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, before we talk about the book, I just want to get something out of the way for our viewers. You are no longer with the Black Lives Matter movement anymore, correct?
That is right. I'm charting a new course.
Now, let me actually jump for a second. You talk about organizing local and national governments to work towards abolition. But for governments both at local and national levels, the word abolition, it's a scary, scary word. What do you offer so that they see abolition not as some kind of idealistic thing, pie in the sky, but as an actual viable option, an attainable vision to deal with the current systemic problems that we have?
I mean, that's a great question. And, the best example I can give is my own hometown here in Los Angeles, where for about a decade to 15 years, local grassroots organizers from different organizations fought to end 2 jails that were going to be built here. And, many people told us we couldn't do it. People told us it wasn't possible. Many people told us that it was just a lofty idea. But in the last 3 years, we stopped both of those jails. And in fact, Men's Central Jail, which is one of the largest jailers in the world, is on the train tracks to being shut down. And so policy that is centered around abolition is not just something that is a lofty idea, it's absolutely possible. And the last thing I'll say is this same county that said, 10 years ago we couldn't shut down the jails has a whole report called Care First, Jails Last, where they're focusing solely on creating a mental health system for people across the country. And so abolition actually works.
So
that was sorry everybody. anyway, my initial response was
No!
or
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
in line with what I've been sort of arguing for a little minute now is that, again, we are in a moment, I think, unlike any other moment in time, where we can hear so much of the language or the reference to problems we face, struggles we're involved in. But it's the way that these discussions take place, the directions in which we are being encouraged to go, that become the problem. So when I saw that clip and saw that Patrisse was looking to get involved in this discussion of abolition, again, I had the reaction that I just shared, but thought again of just others whose work I think is challenged and negated, maybe intentionally, maybe not. It's certainly to the political benefit of the status quo by that kind of work, by the re-emergence of people like Patrisse in these spaces. And when I say people like Patrisse, I'm not even talking about all of the claims about her ignoble behavior. I'm talking about her political approach and the political approach she represents. I'm less interested in some of the more salacious discussion or claims, although there are a couple stories I did want to pull up today related to that. But I'm more interested in the politics and the analysis brought to bear on these issues. So when we've talked about Patrisse before in terms of like the Eyes on the Prize video or just BLM in general, the sort of walking away from radical traditions, the Black radical, the radical, traditions of Black radical politics, or the Black radical tradition, seem to get suppressed, and that's. So I wanted to and again, the links to all of this are already in the show notes, but I just wanted to quickly remind of some of the other discussions we've had and some of the other work being done around abolition. So this is just one quick clip that I think, well, the reason I picked this section is not only to remind that Dr. Joy James has been here and will obviously be back as soon as we can arrange it. Not only has she been doing work around abolition with a very different politics and worldview, but she also says something in this clip, in a discussion of it in one of her more recent visits, that I think speaks to the approach represented by Cullors. Not as so. Let me just start it right here.
That Lucille Clifton beautifully writes about in her poem are the framework for our movements. And excuse me, those bones do not come from the academy, because the academics, whatever you and I do as our side commitments,
the side hustle.
our side hustle. The deans aren't paying us, they pay us to do something else, right? You can follow orders, and then we do what we can. But the new bones come from the people who struggle for dignity, honor, and to feed their kids, and to care for their elders and the ill and the ailing. And so Cabral, Lucille Clifton opened the doors for me to look at our industry, which is academia, and to look at the claims of not only our industry, but nonprofit industries, assertions that they're offering new bones, like a skeletal framework that can actually hold up a body of freedom movements. And I, in the Verso article, which was built on the talk, I argue differently.
Why do you think it's important? Black poet, educator, and parent, Lucille Clifton. Just one little clip of of Dr. James making the point about the imposition and intervention made by nonprofit structures, which I thought, again, is, you know, relates well to the space that Patrisse and others come at this and are encouraged to come at this. That I do want to raise reason for that. Of course, it has to do with again, I always point back to the women of Insight. The revolution will not be funded, right? The nonprofit industrial complex at the Book of Essays. Of course, Robert Allen, whose work is quoted or excerpted in there. You know, his early analysis of the rise of the nonprofit industrial complex is important. But anyway, but again, all designed to, I think at this point in time, speak back to us in the most harmful, negative, and limiting ways. So you all say you want abolition? Cool, we'll give you a version of abolition. You all want to talk about police violence and police brutality? We'll give you Netflix documentaries to talk about that. You want to, you know, I don't know, you want to complain about politicians and the climate crisis? We'll give you a comedic film to watch, you know, Don't Look Up or something like that. So unlike times in the past where getting the discussion of concerns acknowledged at a certain level, it can be done now. It's just in a very sophisticated way. Shifted into safe political responses, responsive spaces. So in a way, it's kind of like what I'm saying. I know I didn't play any of it. It was just something I just saw and finished watching early this morning. But in that F designifier in his video about Drake, he acknowledges that it wasn't Drake's fault that ruined hip hop. He says it was his generation. I think he's a generation younger than me, that his generation sort of sold it out or let it go or didn't step up and do all that, in which case I could say my generation didn't organize ourselves, and that whole hip hop activist thing that many of us, at least not enough of us, but some of us at least were critical of from the beginning, didn't do enough. But the real point isn't that a particular generation or artist or individual or organization did something right or wrong. It's that the colonial process continues unabated, largely just reforming and rebranding. And in many ways, we haven't either understood that, and then we certainly haven't acted upon it in the right way. But it's in other words, it's not a generational thing. It's not an artist thing. It's not a generational thing. It's not an individual activist thing. It's a collective. It's an insufficient collective analysis and organized response that is the problem. And I think a lot of it is because the hip hop narrative historically has been misunderstood, and as a subset of the macrocosm of the historical narrative of this country has been misunderstood. So a lot of what or misrepresented. So a lot of what we're encouraged to form as an analysis and a response is equally insufficient. So I just want to play this clip of a recent conversation we had not long ago with Dylan Rodriguez about his book, White Reconstruction, in which he talks about at the end of the book, and maybe I'll just let this speak for it, but in the epilogue of his book in particular, he talks quite well and as I guess somewhat extensively about abolitionism. But so I wanted to play this quick excerpt, just again as a sort of reminder of what I think it feels like is coming as an attempt to negate this kind of work that we didn't really complete. I think is that you talk about in your book is talk a little bit more about what your vision of abolition is. When you talk about abolitionism in White Reconstruction, maybe versus how it's discussed popularly, what does for you abolition mean?
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. So I probably spend the most time on thinking through it in the epilogue, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I bring it up constantly, and that's because I'll start with this. As far as I'm concerned, one of the things one of the ways to think about abolition, it's a perpetual method. It's a method. It's a way of doing shit. Everything from thinking to teaching to analyzing to organizing, right? Abolition is a way of doing things. I think most prominently, one of my other teachers and mentors, Ruthie Gilmore, has talked about abolition is about making things and creating things, right? So I'm totally on board with that. I'm basically saying similar thing. So when we say that abolition is a method, it's part of a way, it's part of how we do things, that we're also saying it's not certain things, right? And I want to be really explicit about that because I'm getting fucking sick and tired of how a lot of professionals, not just academics, but professionals, are expropriating the identity, the branding of abolition and abolitionists in really weird and fucked up ways right now. And I say right now because it's very, very recent. I've been calling myself, and I've been part of abolitionist communities since way before it was okay to do that. Way before you get like looks of approval. It was usually the opposite of a look of approval. Usually people would laugh at you. They think you were out of this world or crazy. I remember the first time I really was forceful with identifying as an abolitionist was at one of these kind of overtly kind of sectarian left organized conferences in the Bay Area. And I was in a session, I was talking about the prison industrial complex. It was probably 1997, 1998. And I remember it was actually a black socialist, right? An elder black socialist asked the question to the room. It was like a room of 15, 20 of us, said, I'm not exactly sure what is a left position on the prison industrial complex. And I raised my hand. I was like, hey, isn't it abolition? And I remember there was another white woman feminist elder, socialist feminist elder, leftist, she was literally knitting. Right. And I don't hate on people who knit. I wish I could knit. I need to learn how to knit. But I remember it was just very kind of appropriate for what she said in response to what I said. As she knit, she didn't even look at me. She kept knitting, and she said, no, it can't be abolition because the difference is, back in the 19th century, everybody knew slavery was wrong. Right. So they could call themselves abolitionists. Right now, you can't call yourself an abolitionist because it's not the same thing. And I was just like, my head exploded, of course. Right. Just how ahistorical and stupid that shit was. And I think I left the room or something. So I'm saying, like, I've been identifying with abolitionist politics, identity struggles since that time. What you're seeing happening recently is a couple things. One is these misinterpretations, and I think that they become largely intentional. I don't think these are born of ignorance. I think these are intentional expropriations of abolition and abolitionist thought. So let me say what it is not. Abolition is not an outcome. You know what I mean? Like, I've been in rooms with people on these Zoom rooms and whatnot. I've been saying, repeat it after me, please. Like, I don't like leading chants, but let's repeat this together. Abolition is not an outcome. The reason I feel like I got to say that so explicitly is when abolition comes up in organizing conversations, especially with crowds, with groups that are kind of coming into activism, right? There's an immediate inclination to postpone abolition as something that is far off over there into the future that we can't fuck with right now. We got to deal with more immediate, concrete shit. So, like, I've some version of the phrase I hear all the time is, yeah, abolition is cool, as an eventual goal, right? As an eventual achievement. Right, or an eventual outcome. And I always have to say, no, you got this all twisted. It is not an outcome. It is a way of doing things. It's a method, it's an analysis, a way of organizing. So there's that, right? It's not an outcome, it's a way of doing things. The second thing, and this is something that I want to address to different kinds of professionals, but I think really especially academics, people who identify as academics, especially high profile ones. There's no such thing as an individual abolitionist. All right. Like, there's no such thing as an individual abolitionist. You can brand yourself all you want. You can put it on your fucking Twitter profile as, something that you can conveniently do now. But there's no such thing as an individual abolitionist. And that's to say that I think those of us that are engaged in abolitionist communities and abolitionist struggles, we need to insist on that all the time, and also see it as an opportunity that if we have somebody who says, I'm an abolitionist, and we know they're not connected to a community of people that's going to hold them accountable for calling themselves that, then we with whatever grace we can muster, then we invite them to come into the community. into the organization, whatever collective of people you have that is close, that is nearby, that they probably should be part of. Hey, so-and-so, I saw that, you know, you're down with abolition. So can you hook up with us and help us do this thing over here, right? And on the other hand, call that shit out when the person is just is being cynical about it, right? Or being neoliberal about it. But you see it all the time. And I'll say this, because I want to be graceful and generous about this. I've been really hard in some ways on Michelle Alexander's book, all right, like since it came out, The New Jim Crow, because of what I think it doesn't do, right, in terms of carrying out its analysis that's based on its evidence, and also some misinterpretations, this and that. Now I can do that, and I feel like that's a responsibility that we got to kind of be principled critics of stuff that goes out, especially when it's so widely read and popular. And yet Michelle herself is an excellent example of somebody who has moved her political position because she's been in community and dialogue with people, where now she calls herself I've seen it. She calls herself abolitionist now, whereas she didn't 10 years ago, right? So if you track somebody, and this is again a prominent individual, so in other words, I'm actually saying she's a good example of somebody who's moved toward abolition because she's been in dialogue and community with certain groups of people, right? And then there's many other people who are the opposite of that example, right? Who don't have a connection to communities or they have no accountability to communities of people who call themselves abolition, who just brand themselves abolitionists. So abolition is not an outcome, right? It is not a brand, right? There's no such thing as an individual abolitionist. Abolition is a creative, collective way of doing things, including analysis, writing, thought, poetry, song, organizing, and whatnot. It is not a political program in the conventional sectarian sense. It can generate political programs, yes, right? But there's not a kind of sectarian line that abolition, constructs that you either are in or out of. It's not that. I don't think that's what it is. In historical,
all right. So I just wanted to
I want to use the word genealogy, historical inheritance, right? A historical tradition that can and should constitute.
In many ways, Dylan was, I think, not only responding to what he was seeing and had already been seeing and dealing with as he was writing the book, and in his work up to writing that book, but I think in some ways he was predicting what was coming. So whether he's talking specifically or whether Dr. Joy James is talking specifically about academics or sort of professional celebrities, or whether it's a nonprofit industrial complex, or whether it's individual activists, I think it's all kind of the same sort of warning. And as Dylan writes in his epilogue, he says, quote, "I am increasingly troubled by misappropriations and seemingly calculated political misinterpretations of abolitionist critical praxis that either tolerate or actively reproduce white beings' ascendancy by relying on methods, institutions, and vernaculars of power that replicate the modalities of anti-Black and racial colonial systems from the settler nation state and modern criminal jurisprudence of capitalist property relations and compulsory heteronormativity." So, end quote. So while, again, I haven't, I don't think Patrisse's book is out yet. I haven't read it yet. And I'm happy to read it and be checked on anything I'm getting wrong here. She's been invited on the program. She'd be, always, be welcome back, or welcome. Well, yeah, I guess it would be back. But anyway, but it just feels like that in that conversation. I got to say this also about the full conversation. The link is in the chat, the show notes. You can check it and check me if I'm wrong on this. But the interview with Marc Lamont Hill, I mean, the whole thing. First of all, and I did look through the website and didn't see any. So I've also put in the show notes the discussion we had with the sisters from the BLM 10 who came out last year or whenever that was, to challenge Patrisse and other leadership of Black Lives Matter. I haven't seen any discussion of them or about them with Marc Lamont Hill or the Black News Channel or those kinds of outlets. And the interview with Patrisse that he did was, another one of those very, I mean, he was just praising her and congratulating her and saying she, you know, how much better she's, you know, looking and doing now, and wanting to support and praising her being a New York Times bestsellers list, you know, and you know, only you know, only a little bit of hate here when I say that I think it's you know, as someone who is by the way, thanks everybody who helped get the Myth of Black Buying Power to 80,000 downloads.
We needed a new home.
And I know it's free. I know it the digital copy's free, and I know it's broken up into several sections. I think 9 sections, so it's not like 80,000 books. I think it comes closer to about 10 or 11,000 total books. But free or not, chapters or not, to see 80,000 downloads, to see that at least there's that level of interest, even if it's to criticize, to hate, and to ignore, marginalize, and dismiss the work or misrepresent it when on other platforms. You know, I'm still impressed by that, and I appreciate, you know, all of you who would have downloaded it or and help push that number, and I hope, you know, you continue to do so. But it is that my argument there, and how I interpret what Dylan Rodriguez was saying in that quote there about the misrepresentation of abolition and the return to a sort of how does he put it? Returning to replicate the modalities of anti-Black and racial colonial systems, from settler nation state and modern criminal jurisprudence to capitalist property relations and compulsory heteronormativity. So the last part maybe notwithstanding, but in terms of the settler nation state capitalist property relations approach to these problems, I certainly see that in the as some of what we're going to get to this morning as well, but in the general nonprofit leadership of BLM approach to these problems. And it's certainly, again, a state encouraged, sponsored response. Of course it's going to be encouraged that folks go in these directions. So when I saw this similar story that came out again, and again, I get we can be critical of the sources, but this is sort of my point. By the way, I did look for it. I couldn't find it, and I'm wondering if it was on an email address I was using when I was working with some other group that I no longer have access to. But I did look for the email exchange that I had with Alicia Garza that Patrisse and Opal were on. They didn't chime in but that led to Patrisse coming on the Real News segment I was doing at the time, where that has been famously clipped or infamously clipped as the "We Are Trained Marxists" comment that she made. But the whole point of that exchange was, I don't think you as a group of leaders are talking enough to the actual Black radical left. You're not addressing the criticisms and concerns coming from that space, which I think is very different. So even when Marc Lamont Hill brings up with her, you know, you've gotten criticism and this, that, and the third, they keep it in the context of right-wing conservative critics. We get, and we're not here to pile on to the anti-Black, anti-woman attacks that I know she suffered, or the anti-gay attacks that I know she suffered. That's obviously not the point of this space's criticism. It is, and that of the BLM 10, which again, I think more certainly than mine or anything else, they deserve to be involved in that conversation. Now, if I'm wrong and Marc has talked to them, I apologize, but I don't feel like I've seen that. So when he gives this sort of unquestioned praise and to Patrisse and this cover, and then saying that she made it to the New York Times bestsellers list, well, of course she would. Who puts you there? White affluent readers put you there. So if, to Dylan's point, written very well there, or to my own, said with less skill and expertise, that if your target audience are state-sponsored, capitalist-driven, nonprofit-driven, white, affluent, targeted politics, then of course. Anyway, so but what I thought was interesting was just seeing this story here that BLM's millions accounted for after leaders quietly jumped ship. No one appears to have been in charge at Black Lives Matter for months. The address lists on tax forms is wrong. The address it lists on tax forms is wrong, and the charity's 2 board members won't say who controls its $60 million bankroll, the Washington Examiner has found. Let me see what else I had highlighted here. Was that it? That was all I had highlighted there? Okay. No, it's not. I don't know what's going on over here, good people, and I'm sorry to keep bringing it up. It is frustrating. I don't want anybody to think that I don't take what we're doing here seriously enough, that I don't put in a lot of time to prepare and to have my tech ready for it so I apologize. I just do apologize, but I don't want anybody to think that I'm taking it lightly and that I'm not more frustrated than I'm showing right now. So I've said before that when we come on here that I'm not lying, I'm not fake, but there is a level of performance here. Boy, oh boy. Anyway, Cullors announced in May that she was stepping down and that activists Makani Themba and Monifa Bandeli would lead the organization as senior executives. But Themba and Bandeli revealed in September that they never actually took the job because of disagreements with BLM's acting leadership council. I used to be cool with Makani. I would love to hear from her on this. Shout out to her. Monifa as well. I don't know, haven't, built with her in Lumumba in a minute, but I would love to hear from them as to what really went on. Both Themba and Bandeli told the Washington Examiner they do not know who took over as BLM's top executive after their departure, and neither would say who served on the council. The 2 remaining BLM board members, Shalomia Bowers and Raymond Howard, forgive me for any mispronunciation, did not return numerous requests for comment asking who has been in charge of BLM, its money, since Cullors left charity in May. Bowers served as the treasurer for multiple activist organizations, including BLM, PAC, and Los Angeles-based jail reform group that paid Cullors $20,000 a month and dropped nearly $26,000 for meetings at a luxury Malibu resort in 2019. Anyway, it just goes on to detail what, where issues with the money and whatever, and they don't know where the money is and or who has control of the money. There's apparently a $4 million spending discrepancy, but you know what? But so to my point, like, I feel like, and I don't know, and if it's happened, again, I'm happy to be checked on this, but whether it's on Marc Lamont Hill's show or elsewhere, I feel like if you present yourself and have acted in the leadership of Black communities, that you should be able to speak to them and share with them what is really going on, and have some public discussion about the criticism coming from particularly people who worked with you and those in left of you, to your political left. But again, I just haven't seen it. So I'm not saying it hasn't happened. I just haven't seen it, and I don't know. And yet at the same time, I see this attempt to, what I feel like is an attempt, consciously or conscious or not, to negate some of the radical analysis and responses that could potentially be so beautiful and more impactful. So there was another story that came out, again, from Fox News. So I get the source, but this is why I think, again, that it can't be, but it's parroting criticism that has come from the Black community, the Black left community, and members of, or formerly or still with Black Lives Matter, who are just raising questions about the money. Saying here that it was revealed that Patrisse spent $3.2 million on homes in Georgia and Los Angeles. There was some concern about what has gone on with money that went up to BLM Canada with her former wife. I believe they're not together anymore. And I don't hear any of that discussed in anywhere. So it's the same kind of thing where Makani and Monifa Bandeli are, you know, referenced. They don't have anything that they say here publicly. They never took, you know, the reins of the organization, so don't have any of the details of the information. And yet, but in what is supposed to be an interview targeting Black audiences, Marc Lamont Hill doesn't bring any of this up, doesn't engage any of this with Patrisse, doesn't invite these other critics on to discuss with them that I was able to find or have been able to find. And if I'm wrong on that, again, I'm happy to be checked on that. So, oh wait, there was one more here. Let me get that over here. So anyway, I just wanted to remind, you know, at least what some of what has gone over here in regards to the discussion of abolitionism.
Sure.
And in fact, I did have a clip. I do have that clip. So good. Let me play this clip from when we had the spokespersons on surrounding from the BLM 10. Just as another reminder, the link is in the show notes, I believe, to see the whole discussion. But let's just check this out.
Yeah, you know, I think, well, first, you know, a lot of us here, if not individually, but definitely our chapters have worked together for a long time. I think there comes a time when you can call people in and, you know, attempt to, you know, have some democratic discussions about leadership, about accountability, who we are accountable to, our political direction, all of those things. But there comes a point when whoever it is you're trying to hold accountable is clearly not in alignment with those things. And each one of us lives in the communities where we organize, and we're accountable to our communities. We expect the same thing, the same kind of critique that we're giving them. And you know, I've been thinking about this a lot. I just came back from a sabbatical, but I also think the urgency of the moment says that, like, this doesn't work. Historically, it's never worked like this. It doesn't work like this in our chapters. We owe more to Black folks in this country to do this with some intention, with some historical context, and, you know, and to be real, like, we're not a tool of the Democratic Party. And to be able to say that, you know, we may have different things going on in our cities, but specifically, we have worked tirelessly with our communities to be about what's going on the ground. So here in DC, we're not a state. So what is happening, you know, what they're talking about, you know, across the river in Congress has nothing to do with the fact that we have one hospital over here east of the river for 150,000 people, and Black women can't have children on this side because there is no neonatal or, you know, gynecological specialties for pregnant women. Say, you know, and to spend that much time with that much platform, not uplifting, even in this city, the things that are happening to Black folks, the things that are happening in California, New Jersey, Philly, it's a failure to stay with your feet, your ears, and your heart on the ground. And Black people we don't have that luxury. We don't have that luxury to do things lackluster. We don't have the luxury to not be principled. And let's talk about it. We don't have to agree, but there has to be some political, you know, political and principled struggle about these things, because we can't afford to do this wrong. And, you know, none of us have closed the door calling people accountable. People have to opt into accountability. And then to turn and say that, hey, a lot of us aren't really chapters, or, you know, we're out here for the money. Nobody's hurting for money, because the wealth in our communities is the people. And so if that means by calling you accountable, somehow we don't have access to capital, it means nothing to the rest of us. So
if I can jump in
Sure.
as well. And I want to just maybe take a tiny step back because, you know, some of the viewers might be hearing about this for the first time and may not really understand the context for, you know, in which the letter was written. And I do just want to say like a couple just facts, right? And the first fact is that what we call the network, the global network, has always been separate from the chapters, right? I'm a core organizer with Black Lives Matter Philly, and we have always had to do our own work, our own fundraising, our own everything with very little support from this thing called the global network, right? And so I do think a very important thing for folks to understand is that when you were talking or critiquing BLM Inc. or TM, that is separate from the work that individual chapters are doing in their communities, right? We are accountable to. Another piece is that, you know, many of us have attempted to be a part of a process of accountability, internal accountability within the context of the global network, right? There have been different iterations of that. You know, some of like these conversations have been going on internally for 3, 4, 5 years, right? And you can look back to other chapters who have released statements of disaffiliation. New York did that. I forget the city in the Midwest that did that. Was that Indiana or?
Cleveland too.
Cleveland did that. And so there is a precedent for these issues, but many of us, because we believe in, you know, our collectivity, our, you know, unity being our strength, you know, we have been trying to, number one, get financial transparency. I mean, most of us have received almost nothing from the global network, which we suspect has received millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. We actually can't tell you. You have as much information as we do about how many resources have been funneled into the global network. That has not trickled down to the chapters. That's let's be clear about that. Secondly, this issue of leadership. We call ourselves a leaderful movement, right? We call ourselves a leaderful organization, and our individual chapters tend to function like that. But then we come into this global network space and it doesn't function like that at all. Most of us found out about this new formation with the rest of the world, right? Most of us, you know, for many of us, you know, and it is and it's not about Patrisse Cullors, right? It is and it is not. It's really about how, you know, we can profess to be a decentralized, leaderful movement, but then have leadership, self-appointed leadership, making unilateral decisions that not only affects all of us, but in many cases puts us at risk, right? These are looking at us funny style, thinking that we have resources when we...
The link to that full discussion is in the show notes, so please go check that out. But again, I just wanted to, just remind what I'm not seeing take place in other media outlets, in other discussions around Black Lives Matter or around Patrisse's, not only her reemergence in this context of abolitionism, or what I'm describing as a reemergence, but the criticism around her particular behavior that is being, of course, obviously taken advantage of by a conservative, you know, national press, but at the same time is not being addressed in spaces that are supposed to be Black or alternative or targeting Black audiences. So, and it's just, and it's been for me, again, when I referenced that email going back some years ago, I think I never finished that thought, but that email exchange with Alicia Garza, that was the whole point, that you are seemingly only talking to a white or bourgeois audience and not responding to real concerns coming from the grassroots. So anyway, so that's that. Let me let's take a very quick break and then get into some other things. There's a lot more I wanted to get into this morning, and I feel like I'm in a little bit of a race against a computer clock. So let's do that, and then hopefully we have time at the back end to respond to any comments, questions, or any bits and pieces that got missed. So in the interim, so be right back.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
All right, so I do like to have some fun, but on this show, and did I not have this thing clipped?
Guys, one of the great questions of our time.
But there was this, so in over the years, so obviously a lot of what, just following this context here, of these contradictions that we have, are these, okay, here we go. Let me see if I can get to this part here. Hold on.
This is just a job to you? Remember Larry L? I understood your article, but if I...
Okay. So in these contradictions that the many contradictions that we're struggling with, is the contradiction of all, again, more issues of the day can be discussed, but have to be discussed in a very conservative, nuanced, and sometimes a sophisticated softening, or it's like the political version of,
I mean, this is white peopling.
I don't know if Kaba knows he's been excerpted there, but it is the political analysis version of,
I mean, this is white peopling.
And it's not even, and in this context, it's not even just white peopling. It's a conservative analysis being imposed and encouraged by the established, the elite, the ensconced elite, that rewards Black narratives that tell the tale of Black struggle in a very softened way. And over the years, in my own work around this issue of buying power has come, I've even been juxtaposed with this next character, who was brought out to, not specifically to contradict me, but to promote the Black capitalist analysis or response to the impositions of capitalism on Black people. And for anyone, particularly of a certain generation or a certain age or political experience, we would have all known this name, that of course not of course, but of the infamous and conservative, and many of you younger real radicals may not even be aware of this guy, but Larry Elder. Now, Larry Elder has a long career of being the Black conservative spokesperson or part of that ilk, that crew. We're going to come back and talk about that crew vis-a-vis Cosby shortly, but the John McWhorters who I've come up against, the whoever's, you know who they are, all of them. But I did not know but his name came up on my new favorite show, or I should say my new favorite white man show, R.M. Brown, and this is not brand new because I'm still catching up to some of his content, but I thought what was shown in this exchange was fascinating. So when Larry Elder was doing his California fakery thing a couple months ago, the actress Rose McGowan, who some of you may know, I don't really know her, but I've seen her floating around in sort of in the political world, in part in response to her being, I believe, sexually assaulted by Harvey Weinstein. Yeah, we'll come back to his comparison to Cosby later. But also she apparently has gone to sort of in a conservative political direction, and was in support of Larry Elder, who I believe was trying to get California state to become governor out there, right? Wasn't that his point? But I did not know what I'm about to show you, which I think is fascinating and speaks to, again, there is a parallel, there's a thread starting with F designifier. I think that's how it has meant to be said, F period designifier. So F designifier. From his argument about Drake and what I was trying to say up there very quickly, and then through this piece about Patrisse. So I just want to show you this clip again from my man, not that I know him at all, R.M. Brown's show. Check this out.
I were to just agree with you, which I basically do or whatever, we wouldn't have, we wouldn't be getting this attention right now.
And I remember Larry Elder sat down with Janine Garofalo and he's like, and we just sort of like, we're like, we were off air. How do you do this? And he's like,
So, of course, part of what R.M. Brown does, and this is one of the reasons why I like what he does, and why I used to like people like Jimmy Dore, who I have moved on from, but I can get comedic left of center commentary. Now, Brown is an actual communist. Left of center commentary about the establishment, what I can consider the establishment, nominally alternative white media environment, from which you get a lot of, I think, important news, less so analysis, but at least news. And in this case, Brown is talking about Sam Cedar's show. Now, some of us will remember Sam Cedar and Janine Garofalo from what they just referenced there, from the Air America days, from when back in the early 2000s, I believe it was, where we were being told this was the new radio, liberal, left of center, left wing radio network that was going to challenge Rush Limbaugh and all of them, and da 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 da. And it was quickly exposed to be not anything like that. But Sam Cedar comes out of that and has a relatively popular YouTube show as well. And this is where that story is coming from. So my bad. I just wanted to reset that content.
come on, guys, we're off the field. And we're like, what? He's like, come on, we're off the field. We don't, no need to have game faces on. And we were just like, wait, what? Like, you think this is just a job to you?
It was off the air during the commercial breaks that Elder dropped a bomb. Between the small talk, he told me casually he had understood my essay just fine and all of its main points. In other words, he got it. Quote, but if you and I agreed, there'd be no show, unquote. I recall him saying, quote, we wouldn't have this. He gestured to all the lit up phone lines with a kind of glee.
Arun Brown?
That's what
Arun Brown
needs to start doing. Need to create.
So the only point I'm getting at, and this is why I'm here to.
I gotta talk to the people, son.
Not to power. I'm not trying to talk to the people in power, so-called. Speak truth to power. I want to speak truth.
I gotta talk to the people, son.
Because I hope it was clear in my interruption there, and only playing a little bit of the clip there. But Larry Elder is telling Sam Cedar and them off air that it's just a performance. We don't have to keep up the debate. If I don't have a contrarian point of view, we don't get the phone lines lit up. We don't have a show. And as I interpret it, if I don't parrot these white supremacist, colonial, capitalist inspired talking points and represent in blackface these very white conservative politics, I don't have a show. I don't have a career. I don't have a place. I don't have a check. I don't get the. So consciously or not, that's what I think is happening and encouraged through whether it's rappers, academics, other artists, so-called activists, what journalists, whatever. There are these inducements where it doesn't even have to be said that explicitly, that it is understood there is a check to be gained over here. There's a level of popularity to be gained over here. And by the way, one of the other reasons why, now I explained my start of this shift earlier, but this is part of the reason why I've been hearing a lot, and when I investigated the methodology a little bit, and why I moved on from Jimmy Dore and maybe some of these others that he's rocking with, that I've even sort of supported in other areas of their work. Because the methodology that they're bringing to the vaccine and the COVID conversation is really one to get themselves a bigger, wider audience. Wider and wider audience.
I mean, this is white peopling.
So like when Glenn Greenwald and Jimmy Dore and them are talking about how great it is to go on and engage with Tucker Carlson so they can get a bigger audience, like it's too much of that. And they start, it's the unsaid invitation to whiteness. I mixed what I like.org, by the way, where I wrote an essay on it titled An Invitation to Whiteness. And I was asked to write that essay. I wrote it, and what usually happens. You know, I'm asked for my thoughts, and then, but then that's why I have imixwhatilike.org, so they can be somewhere. But the point is, I didn't want them. I have constantly made conscious and career inhibiting choices, rejecting that invitation. And as I think I'm going to come to in a little bit, in placing myself in this, you know, as I think would be more appropriate to do, it's a conscious choice. It is a conscious choice that I've made. Now it's also, you know, there's also specifics of my limitations, you know, my other limitations, you know, there's certainly, you know, analytically, intellectually, writing, you know, I think I hit a pretty high pitch, but there are levels to this. So I can, you know, but the point is the invitations, I've just rejected them. And I think consciously or not, people in that clip there, Larry Elder very consciously accepted his. I think it could be argued that Cullors and others consciously make decisions to accept those invitations because there are penalties for not. And again, there are levels to those as well. There's the political imprisonment, which we're going to talk a little bit about this morning as well. There's assassination and exile, of course, but then many low levels below that are marginalization, dismissal, being disinvited or uninvited, unreferenced, or when referenced, your work misrepresented, that kind of thing. So I get it. Anyway. All right, so let me take another quick transition break here, and then come back and get to again following the same thread, but I think having a little bit, you know, having a little bit more fun with that. So back.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
I am wondering though, how long did it take? Like if I had that experience with Larry Elder, I would have made so much noise about that. I would have been running that story for so long. Like I don't know, maybe they have, and I just don't, you know, pay attention to them. So I don't know, but I don't know. I feel like I'd have been blowing that joint up. All right, so I do have. Oh, right. That's what I was going to do. Okay, so there's a couple other things following this thread. I of contradictions, of inducements. Oh, but is this? Oh, right, that's at the end. I got that. Wait, where is that? Where did I put that? Oh, there it is. There it is. Okay, good. Let's. Oh, but I think I need to do that sooner. We might need to get to that sooner. My bad, everybody. Okay, so here we go. Let me just start with this clip here. Of a I didn't know the show existed, but I did see a little bit of this. So when we're talking about inducements and when we're talking about oh, that's why I had brought this. I'm all out of order now because I'm trying to beat the clock here. But relative to this ongoing struggle I have around I'm not getting into crypto this morning, but cryptocurrency, which is really a subset of my own concern about the promotion of Black capitalism as a response to worsening conditions and as a response to the potential uprise within Black and other communities. There's this constant refrain of Black capitalism being the solution, and new ways of rebranding Black capitalism as the appropriate response to, again, the worsening conditions that we started the show off discussing through Jackie's show. And this is a new one. So let's check this out real quick.
It's going to be the fastest growing, definitely the most replicated.
Maybe we give them a chance.
Oh, to be young, gifted, and Black. If you stroll around any hood in the USA, hidden behind some of the sneakers hanging from the wire, black tops, and trap music, are inventors, creators, and designers just waiting to be seen, heard, and discovered. Welcome back to another episode of Bet on Black, a show brought to you by Target and Revolt. I'm Keenan Beasley, and wow, do we have a show for you tonight.
Target. So right off the top, Target and Revolt.
Last week, 3 more entrepreneurs pitched their ideas to our judges.
Jax was started in 2018 when we realized.
We're clear.
So that was actually,
you are charging the schools.
That was the one clip I wanted to. That was actually it that I wanted to start off with. So it's another show sponsored by Target and Revolt TV that highlights Black entrepreneurialism as a response, and even in the track that opens the show, the get my grind on, hustle, the hustle harder, grind, this, that kind of approach, suggesting, now again, and as we've talked about many times here, we'll continue to, a lack of Black entrepreneurial spirit is not the problem here. All right, that has never been the problem. Black people have never had problems being entrepreneurs. The problem has been surviving within a white supremacist capitalist colonial situation. So what the show does, so they got Target coming in, and of course Target, the winners of the show, depending on what level you win, you either get, apparently you get some cash. You can, of course, the big prize is, if I understand it correctly, to be brought in by Target to sell or to be fully funded by Target or something to that. But this next clip, I think, from the same show, I think demonstrates some more of the problem.
And it was a beautiful and calming experience. Started having a conversation around, like, so if we did it, if we had a space like this, like, what would be in there? What would it look like? And 6 weeks later, we opened our doors.
6 weeks.
Wow.
Sorry, I have to ask, how did you do that in 6 weeks?
We learned really early on, we're both doers. We learned that in the 6 weeks. We're like, oh, this is like, you do that too. And then it just
came together. We also both have a lot of community in Oakland. So people rallied with us. They were just like, what do you need? We didn't expect for our business to grow so quickly. We were presented with all these opportunities. We needed trucks. We needed to hire additional staff because our brick and mortar was really busy. So that's one area that we were like, we need finances and capital to be able to make that happen and to grow that part of the business.
So how do you accrue the inventory?
Everything is paid for upfront.
Wow.
For all of our vendors. We do not do consignment.
Wow.
It's been really easy to find the business. And it's been a pleasure of ours to pay invoices every week to Black women.
I'm a little emotional because I work for a mass retailer. I work for Target. And we come to spaces like yours to find inspiration and to find businesses that we can actually bring in and scale into mass. So your business is so important. Like you two are doing the Lord's work for the culture more than anything. And I just thank you for the work that you do.
Well, this is really beautiful.
So I actually thought that the clip was going to set that up for me, but these two women have a business that I believe it's like a plant growing business in Oakland that works with. Now I can't remember exactly what it is, but the reason I know I clipped it was that I thought it was a very moving story. These two Black women set up a business meant to help Black women in the Black community. They do some good work. They're not horrible people. They seem very committed and hardworking. But the problem, of course, as not enough, I think, but I and others have been arguing, is that there isn't enough money in the Black community to support Black businesses so that these businesses can grow to then do what we're told they would do, which is hire more Black people, create more Black wealth, and so on and so on and so on. That's not how wealth is created. So what we see here is the very colonial process of Target hiring Black women to reach Black women to bring, as she said, those Black women into the Target environment to help them through investment from Target scale their businesses. That's something that I've been saying for a long. That these Black owned businesses are too small, and even if they reach and can reach this Black customer base, which is always the initial base, and can attract that consumption. Even that little bit is simultaneously too much for these Black businesses to handle, and too little to be enough as an investment to help them scale to become large enough to satisfy that increasing consumer base. So they have to come here and pitch to this show, give this very moving story, and even to the sisters wanting to cry and all this other stuff. And then, and even I'm watching it, I remember, again, like they say, I don't remember everything that was said, but I remember how I felt, and I was moved. I am moved. I am always moved by this. So I'm not saying like I'm not against Black business because I hate the idea of Black people doing something for themselves. I'm saying I hate it as a solution, as an imposed, promoted solution to collective advance and improvement. And so we see a show put together, designed consciously or not, to impact consciously or not the colonized or oppressed communities' responses to say the issue isn't the colonial relationship. The issue isn't capital or capitalism. The issue is financial literacy, our business acumen. If we could just get the investment, if we could just get connected to Target, we'll be good. And of course, going back to the initial discussion about Drake and hip hop, here is T-Pain again, an artist made famous, yes, through some talent, but primarily through a white corporate environment that uses the culture of the oppressed to testify against them, who has already been a commercial success artistically, and is now recently, as we've even covered here, involved in promoting the Black capitalist, the expansion of Black capitalist endeavor in the digital, metaverse world, but then is doing it here as well for Target and Revolt, which is Sean Combs, some of us used to call him Puffy, who has himself a much longer career and relationship in commercializing, playing that corporate bridge role, the bridge from corporate America to the Black community through hip hop, through exploiting artists and the art form to build a bigger business and brand, et cetera, and so forth, who has himself come back on under the auspices of leading Revolt TV and other media to rehash and reaffirm the Black capitalist response to oppression by saying corporate advertisers aren't doing enough to support Black media, so give us money to support our buying power, to appreciate our buying power. So he has done. So Puffy alone, from hip hop to Black conservatism to Black capitalism, through this sort of this thread I'm trying to run through this morning of promoting. I'm trying to think of how Dylan put it: the settler colonial responses that are required by those in power. Puffy has been involved in all of that. So to see that here again is consistent and not unsurprising, or not surprising, I should say. But anyway, so I just thought that I just wanted to that was just one. I guess that was it. That's all I needed to do with that right there. It's just a shame. But it is related to this story here. Just to follow up on that a little bit, from April of last year, Target commits to spending more than $2 billion with Black-owned businesses by 2025, which again, as I've covered here repeatedly, the goal is to, as they say, add products for more than 500 Black-owned businesses, increase its spend with Black-owned companies such as marketing agencies, construction companies, facilities, maintenance, and more, establish new resources, including Forward Founders program to support Black-owned companies and help them grow their businesses. So again, this is the same thing, the same Black capitalist-inspired response to capitalist oppression. We'll give Black businesses some money, we'll support some Black entrepreneurs, and especially if they can be Black women, or even better if they can be attractive Black women, even better if they can be attractive Black women with a sad story, in conversation with other Black men and women, all under the authority auspices of Target and Revolt and all of their funders and sponsors. So one day I have to come back and get more fully into that. As well, right. And then as I made a note here that not only are they supporting Black capitalism, but but through this $2 billion in funding are likely to reduce these Black-owned companies to target support suppliers and subsidiaries. So again, just like we've discussed here, writ large, so to speak, with the Black Wall Street history, the money that existed in Black Wall Street was a subsidiary to the surrounding and much larger white oil and other industries. So that's what we're seeing here. The success is becoming a subsidiary in your business to Target. And that would be, from the perspective business-wise of those Black communities, a success. So from the artistry of T-Pain, Drake, whoever, the goal is to sell records or move digital downloads and streams to white audiences, to become a subsidiary of white corporations, white audiences, etc., because Black audiences alone do not generate the money and the spins to get you to where you want to get. The Black community alone, I mean, theoretically, those sisters could stay right at that level economically and business-wise and satisfy the needs of that immediate Oakland community. But that's not what business and capitalism encourage. The ever expansive nature and inherent design of capital is requires that, and that's how it graphs so perfectly. And that's why Nkrumah said that capitalism is the practice of domestic colonialism, because it is about the ever constant extraction both of resources, labor, and material, but also the immaterial consciousness is extracted. The radicalism is extracted and rebranded and repackaged and sold back to the community, just like any other product, as, you know, nonprofit, Black entrepreneurialism, individual success stories, and so on and so forth. All right, I'm just not going to be in order this morning. That's all right. We're just going to, so let's take a quick break and move into some of this Bill Cosby stuff. Just following the same thread. Back in a quick second.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
Now, are you all watching the new series from
Now,
Kamau
Pierre,
Bell,
you brought-
We Have to Talk About Cosby? I just watched episode 1 yesterday. So many contradictions. So I don't know if you all are watching. I don't honestly know. This is not an endorsement. But I want to start with a quick clip here from the good folks at Comedy Hype, just to sort of set what some of the discussion of the documentary is from Black comedians, but I think also reverberates beyond just Black comedians, and I think represents these many contradictions.
Brought this up, and I think the complex thing about this story is it's not, you know, strictly that people may feel like, oh, we don't need to have it at all, but it's also who's behind it, who's producing it,
right,
which is W. Kamau Bell. So I want to ask you this and start with you, Pierre. Do you think that W. Kamau Bell, especially because he's a Black stand-up comedian, do you think he's a sellout for standing behind something like this?
Well, I wouldn't use the word sellout. How about opportunist? You know, maybe opportunist. Are we allowed to give Bill Cosby his flowers at all? He does not deserve flowers now at all, because of all he's done beforehand for the stuff he's done. He's made a mistake. He paid for it. So at the end of the day, how much time are we gonna rehash this? Is it gonna constantly be rehashed? Okay, after this one, do we do another documentary 4 years from now about it again? Like, at what point he served his time, his tarnished. We know what it is. How much more do we need to bring him up and talk about it with anybody? I mean, constantly, you know, it was on our mind so much. Is this the finality? Is this what we want to see? Like, okay, after this one here, we don't need to hear about it no more. Or do we bring it up again 2 more years and 2 more years after that? I mean, how long do you beat a what do you call it? Beat a dying dog. Yeah, at the end of the day, how much do you keep beating on it? Yeah,
not a dying dog.
Is it
Vanessa,
who's getting the satisfaction out of this? Who is getting the enjoyment out of it, or the clarity out of it? Who is it that's getting that? They need that.
Vanessa, I want to throw that same question to you. What do you think about W. Kamau Bell? Do you think he's a sellout, or, you know, I think Pierre brought up a great point, an opportunist? What are your thoughts?
I wouldn't use the word sellout. Opportunist is a nice word, a better word, I think, that fits if I were going to say anything. If nothing happened, he wouldn't have anything to produce. You know what I mean? So it happened. He has a right to produce things like this. You know what I'm saying? As Trey was saying, there, you know, it's interesting. You know what I'm saying? We do have these ways that we hold people up as heroes and stuff. And I think my question more is when are we going to start realizing that people are human and they're very flawed, even when it comes to our pastors or whomever it is? We're always so shocked when we find out some really messed up stuff, you know what I'm saying, or whatever, when it's like, take the good that you can take from somebody and leave the bad and keep it pushing. If you need to be prosecuted or whatever needs to happen, let him do that and move on. Do we need to keep doing the deep dive so we can start?
Oh, my bad. So, so I just want to play a little bit of that. And again, I think I put this in the show notes. I watch Comedy Hype all the time. I encourage people to check it out. So you heard a little bit of where their perspective is and where they continue on with this, and some of the good points that I do think were made that are interesting and show some of the contradictions here. And this is where I would include my own. Pierre, as I've said, I want to be to Black radical politics what Pierre is to Black comedy. That, you know, the welcomed and included and often, but often joked mixed brother who comes on in and contributes what he can. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? But and that's sort of what the point. So they even raise the question of, well, Pierre raises the point that, well, I think Vanessa or someone else on the panel raises the point that Kamau Bell has a white wife, and was saying, well, should he be even, you know, why is he even making this series or fronting this series? But Pierre's point was beyond the wife part. His question is, for Kamau or anybody else, what has your contribution been to the Black community, and to what extent have you endeavored to seek out Black audiences? So when I watched the first, so when I watched episode 1, I thought it was interesting that when they show a clip of Kamau Bell performing, I thought it had to be done intentionally. Selected a picture, a still photo from an audience shot that fronted 2 Black women. Almost as if the series was responding to the criticism that they knew they were going to get of Kamau Bell, that not our Kamau, but Kamau Bell, although kind of pun intended with our Kamau too, and in a certain kind of way too, funnily enough. But with Kamau Bell saying, you know, that you don't have Black audiences, you don't perform in Black clubs. Like Pierre was like, I've never seen you. So I kind of feel that way, where I used to feel that way. I don't feel like I deserve it anymore, but I used to feel that way about Black activism. Like, I don't see you in these meetings. I don't see you in those streets. I don't see you in these spaces. Like, and now you coming out like this, speaking on behalf of the Black activist community. And then here's Kamau Bell speaking on behalf of the Black comedic community. So that was one thing. The other thing, though, of course, in terms of the contradiction, is Cosby's guilty. And it's not me speculating or even my opinion. He had to admit guilt as part of what got him out of jail, oddly enough. Like, if you actually pay attention to the case, that was what was funny. You know, like, so even when they say he served his time, well, technically he did. Because per his agreement, he should have never gone to jail. And per that agreement, he had to admit in court that he gave women drugs for the purposes of drugging them for sex. So that was what was wild about that. To get out what many of his supporters wanted, he had to actually admit doing what he was accused of doing. And what this series shows that I didn't have the details on is that, if it's accurate, he's been doing this since like the very beginning of his career. The first, I think, documented case or claim was 1964. So, but then again, but then when the critique comes, you're doing this to attack a Black man on behalf of a white media institution. I get that criticism. I do agree and feel, not maybe agree, but I feel where the frustration comes. Like, as I raised earlier, Rose McGowan's was one of the accusers of Harvey Weinstein. I don't feel like I hear about Weinstein very much anymore. Now, again, I do tend to pay more attention to Black discussions or media spaces, and maybe, you know, Cosby obviously is going to, but I don't feel like I'm hearing in the news much discussion of Weinstein. And I thought he had a second trial. So I don't even, a whole other set of trials to go. So I don't know. So I get that as well. But at the same time, Cosby's no hero. And for me, the critique should have been long ago one, and I don't mean it all to diminish or say one has to happen precedence over the other in terms of these accusations. But even before I'd ever heard of these accusations, I have for years been saying that Cosby should have been torn down or removed from his high horse or status for his political positions. Going back to George Jackson's critique of his position as an FBI agent on I Spy while the FBI is destroying the Black movement, his standoff, relationship to the civil rights and human rights struggles, the condemnation of the Black poor that sort of revived his career post the Cosby Show. like all of that, I thought the Come On People book he did with Poussin, like all of that, I thought was, I mean, that's what I was mad at. And the one time I felt like I was on the same side as Michael Eric Dyson, which was very weird, because his book critiquing Cosby, I thought, if I remember correctly, was on point and at least well timed. You know, the machine that is Dyson. But again, if we raise the criticisms of the sisters at Georgetown about Michael Eric Dyson, is that tearing down a brother, or is that, you know, I don't know. So I don't know. I'm gonna watch the rest of the series though. I mean, it is interesting, and they go back through Cosby's career, but it's also the problem that I have is also the talking heads. You got Roland Martin on there as a talking head. You got what's my man's name? Jelani Cobb on there. You got, of course, Todd Boyd. That man has not. I read his book, the HNIC book, years ago. I don't know how much he's done academically or written since then. Maybe a lot of great stuff. But he's in every one of these documentaries saying exactly the same thing. So I don't know why we can't. I don't know. Are there not any other cultural critics and writers that even white folks like? I mean, damn, that dude is everything. But so like, and of course. I was trying to think of all the names. Al Sharpton is in the joint. So this is again the point. Like, you can raise certain issues, but look at how they're discussed and who's discussing them. What is the critique going to ultimately be? Oh my goodness. So anyway, I'm going to keep watching the series. I don't know if anybody else feels like it's worth their time to do that. But even as where I've sort of felt, in agreement with Bell's point was that, or the intro to the series is, I mean, I don't like Cosby. I haven't liked Cosby for a long, long, long time. I didn't like Cosby, even if we really get real for real. I stopped liking Cosby over the have a Coke and a smile and shut the fuck up line from Richard Pryor and over his beef with Eddie Murphy. Like, that's where, as a youngster, I was like, word? That's Cosby's. So ever since then, I've been looking at Cosby kind of funny, to be perfectly, but the point also is that he has been around. I mean, I was a huge Fat Albert fan. I introduced my children to Fat Albert. We used to watch Fat Albert all the time. I'm still rocking this, he's been around my entire life. He gave us the name, or his movies gave us the name Biggie Smalls, that became for a certain generation of hip hop heads, it is what it. So, but at the same time, for me in this moment, he is yet another example of a lot of the contradictions we have politically, in terms of behavior, celebrity politics, media coverage, punditry, all of these and our gender politics, racial politics. Anyway, I don't know. But the stories and the women that were interviewed, just in the first one, it just seems horrible. It just seems horrible. Dude drugging people, raping them. It's horrible. So, all right, let's keep it moving here. Got many other things to get to. And again, oh wow, it's already 9:48. I'm not even near done. So hopefully you all can hang out. I appreciate you if you can. Otherwise, I know sometimes we can get a little long. The computer's holding up, so I'm gonna keep going. And we'll put the timestamps and the clips so people can come back, and get what they can. But I do appreciate all of you rocking with us this morning, and stick around for some more if you can, because there is more to stick around for. So how about that there? Yeah. Plus, you don't want to go anywhere. What? You don't want to go nowhere. All right, quick break, back in a second here. And I mix what I like. Nope.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
But you know what? If I don't get to it now or later, definitely, you can
put it in the comments.
All right. So there was there's another piece here I wanted to get to, that again, if we want to draw a quick parallel, it's the contradictions, the where we are politically, where we are with media coverage, where we are with our focus. And I did want to pull up another story here from this discussion of the Flint water crisis. And from right here, you're going to see Jordan Sheraton of Organized Coup being interviewed on Useful Idiots here by Aaron Mate, who I was always trying to, I was trying to call the Aaron of journalism. You know what I mean? But just a quick clip, and I think if I didn't, I'll put this in the show notes as well. But I think the discussion that they have in general about, because I'm not really getting into it in this clip here, I don't think, but they have a whole discussion of what Obama knew in terms of the Flint water crisis and what he did and didn't do, which we've covered here and discussed here before. But this is the part I wanted to play, just a quick clip. Anyway, so let's check it out.
You've been a rare media voice for the people of Flint. When you speak to the families, what do they tell you about what they're going through, what the impact has been on children of the Flint poisoning, and how are they feeling right now about their government's response, both at the state and federal level?
Yeah, I think because there's been a narrative both by the Republicans and Democrats and the media, unfortunately, that like the water's fine. I was just there 6 months ago. The water's not fine. I literally spoke with residents who were showing me rashes they're still getting. Not like marks from years ago. Hey, this is fresh out of the shower. I speak with residents who are telling me they're still losing hair when they shower. I speak with residents who are telling me their eyes burn in the shower. I have been to homes in Flint, like within the last year, where the water stinks. So, a lot of people that have never been to Flint just lazily regurgitate data fed to them that the water's fine. If you actually look at the way the testing is being done, it's very cherry-picked data. It's not comprehensive or widespread throughout Flint. So number one, if you go to Flint and you speak with the residents, they've been in an 8-year pandemic of not having clean water. There are still lines at churches to get donated water. This is 8 years later in April. So that's a big reason I keep covering this, is there's been this numbness and this narrative that this is over. It's not over. This community still does not have safe water, and they pay some of the highest water bills in the country. In terms of morale, the other thing have been permanently damaged, learning disabilities.
I just wanted to get that one part in where he's talking about the 8-year pandemic that the people in Flint are facing. I think I meant to bring this up in connection to my argument around the after party. So I'll just go ahead and do that. I don't know if that was my original intent, but one, the story is just traumatic in and of itself. And if you watch Organized Coup, and that's this channel I encourage people to subscribe to and support, Jordan does what, again, I'm hoping that we at BPM can do more of. That is sending people, funding people to do that kind of ground on the streets, on the ground in the streets, investigative reporting that he has been doing, where he literally drives and goes to Flint, Michigan, and stays and does intense, in-depth coverage and talks to all the people that almost never seem to be heard from about what's going on there. Many of them Black, but all of them all of them poor, all of them underserved by a political apparatus, and all of them 8 years in can't safely bathe and drink water. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, that's ridiculous. And yet they're told to come back and vote for these same parties and people. They're told that they're the blame if they don't come out. I think wasn't Michigan blamed in part for not supporting Hillary enough? I mean, why? You all sent Obama out there to fake drink water and not stand up for anybody. Why? So what I'll do is when Kaba was on the other day, we talked about I'll just draw the connected here. We talked about I think I mentioned the after party concept, and by the way, because I got somebody misunderstood that, and in fact that was one of the criticisms I was going to get to later in the show. I'll just bring it up here. Somebody in the comments, because I do try to look at the comments, and some of you were disingenuous, some of you were just the same YouTube stuff, and it's just disingenuous troll nonsense. But for the most part, what we get are actually even where we disagree, they're legit comments from people who I think are legitimately trying to grapple with what we're doing here as content. So I appreciate that. So I do want to, to the extent that my response is a reward, I do want to at least acknowledge and reward and encourage that kind of engagement with our channel and with this show in particular. So that's why I clip my man Pierre and keep saying, if I don't see you here,
put it in the comments.
So, and I think it's I think they go by, I think I wrote it down. I thought I wrote it down. I was sure I wrote it down. So now it's just a question of where I wrote it down. But there was a criticism. I think it was from Joe D. If I got it wrong, please check me on this. But Joe D was saying that they didn't understand my after party point, and about it, but I seem to be saying something about engaging with some. My point about the after party is for a very public and overt discussion of what I think should be our ultimate goal of assuming political power. Most of those discussions have to happen offline in organized settings without microphones and cameras about how that assumption should actually look or take form. But in general, overtly and publicly and proudly, I am advocating that we engage the electoral political system in a very different way. So whether it's a rebrand of the old arguments around becoming a different kind of block, I've made the kind of semi-ironic joke or point, but it's not really, it's actually real. Like, we should be Malcolm X voters and go by his approach, which is again where we are again a block producing our own candidates and campaigns and policies and platforms, et cetera, and then engaging on that basis, engaging other parties on that basis, engaging elections on that basis, locally and nationally. That's what I think should happen. So I'm not saying support establishment politicians. I'm not saying support voting for those we're told to vote for, who constantly lie and don't, and who are funded by our political enemies. That's not what I'm saying. Yeah, that's that. So when I see, so when we brought this up with Brother Kaba the other day, I hope I'm answering Joe D's criticism, and I hope it's clear. The vote should be seen as a path to actual power, control over the mechanisms of policy, specifically for the purposes of redistribution, of debt cancellation, of all these massive things that we are told we aren't even allowed to put on a platform or to think legitimately could be involved in a discussion. That's what I want. And that's the only kind of discussion I really want to have. So if it's wrong, and this is the segue I would want to make here, if that is wrong, I would like to see just a rational, serious discussion about it, and not one that involves the kind of rhetoric that I wanted to display, to show here,
I think
which I think is a problem. Now, we mentioned this with Brother Kaba, and Kaba had let me know the news about Dr. Carr. I do not watch Dr. Carr's commercial media products very often. I don't watch Roland Martin that often. I don't, so I don't see everything. But when I had heard the news of the passing of his mother a couple weeks ago, I think, I'm very sorry to hear that. I did reach out to Dr. Carr, and if I can reach out in criticism, I can definitely reach out and share some condolences. Got a nice response. So shout out and mad love to him, and his family. This is not, my disagreements with him that I'm about to get into again here have nothing to do with a hatred of him or wanting to see him and his family suffer. It's just that we have disagreements. So since then, he has gone to return to his public life and work. And as I'm going to show you here, I think in reference to federal judges, the same argument he and I got into last year, he had something similar to say that I think, again, is something that I want to continue to challenge as an approach that very much relates to my point about the after party. So I just want to share this clip from the other day on Roland Martin's show, where they were talking about the forthcoming selection by Biden of a Black woman for the Supreme Court. And this is what Dr. Carr said.
I suspect, and we talked about this yesterday, you and I rolling offline, I want to know who got to him, because he wasn't going nowhere. I wonder if the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg shook him. And one thing that's striking me when I saw him at the press conference today, I haven't seen Stephen Breyer quite some time. Last time I saw him, interestingly enough, East Street Cinema in D.C., he's aged considerably, of course, but he's in good health, and he hadn't talked like this before, at least not in public. But there's so much here to unpack, and I hope we spend some time on it. I mean, to me, this is really not going to be a fight. I think they'll get this seat. This, it seems to me, particularly for people who don't pay attention to a whole lot of other stuff, this might be enough to put the Democrats in the game to retain the presidency in 2024. When the real end game will come up, because I suspect Clarence Thomas is going to come off that bench before 24 and 28. And then you have a chance to put Roberts back in play with a swing vote. And by the way, I know that Sonia Sotomayor doesn't claim any Afro background, but if you saw her mother, Selena, and know her history, then you understand that Boricua from the Bronx. I'm not one of them Negroes that draws a hard line between people who speak Spanish and people who speak English. So she'll have some comment. If you remember in her confirmation, actually the Hispanic caucus met, and the Mexican Americans didn't have a better candidate. They said it's going to be Sotomayor. And then they reached out, Naya Velasquez tells this story, to the Congressional Black Caucus. And Mel White said, look, if there's nobody Black on the list, we will back Sotomayor. In other words, those kind of meetings are taking place now. Finally, I would say this initially, with Breyer leaving, that short list, Ketanji Brown Jackson, which we probably all thought would be the one nominee, Leandra Kruger out there on the California Supreme Court, who, her mother's from Jamaica, father white. She's a little younger, Yale law editor. To me, intellectually, she kind of probably takes the lead in my mind. And I talked with my students last night about this. We went through this. Michelle Childs, of course, out of South Carolina. Even Stacey Abrams' sister, Leslie, has been floated. Leslie Abrams Gardner, who's down in Georgia, the first Black woman on the court there, federal court. I would say that for me, of course, there's going to be a Black woman, but this is intellectual warfare. This is real intellectual warfare. And those white nationalists, and if you look at the nominees, well, we can talk about this maybe in another round, the number of nominees Biden has pushed, the number that have been appointed, unprecedented except for JFK. But we need to understand that this is intellectual warfare, and this is the reason why you vote. So all people say voting don't matter, just shut up. Just shut up, because these people are playing for all the marbles. This is the window that's going to determine whether the United States goes forward in a way that we recognize.
So when I titled this episode something like so many contradictions, this is my point. This is yet another perfect example. Dr. Carr, first of all, is a monster. This is why he's such a challenge and a concern for me personally. Been listening to this man since before I knew what he looked like, on cassettes. Drove to DC, to Howard, to sit in on his classes. Not even as a student at Howard. I didn't go to Howard, just to sit in on his classes. Like, Carr is a monster. And this is why, for me, to see him in this performative space is so frustrating. You see everything in just that clip. The power of recall, his memory, his command, his engaged. I used to sit every once in a while, and I remember this because it gives me some solace sometimes, to be real. Even every once in a while, you would see a student or two sleeping in the back of his class. And I would look at them like, how in the hell? So now every once in a while, if somebody nods off in mine, I'm like, okay, well, if it's sometimes it's just unavoidable. Although, I'm saying, I mean, let's keep it real. You sleeping in my class, you must be. No, I'm just because you know what I'm saying. Because because for real,
I'm your favorite teacher's favorite teacher.
I'll laugh at myself. No, but Carr. So I would really be like, how could you not? You all don't realize how lucky you are to be able to have him as a professor. And I'm obviously it's still the case. I don't feel any differently. Because we don't get our political analysis from our faculty, our professors. That's not why we're there. We're there to get the information. So to paraphrase something he said that I even quoted in my first book, we don't go to certain sources for the analysis. You just need the information. So when he's talking about the information, I think it's very important. I don't agree with the analysis. And I think more importantly, I don't agree, and this was always my problem, and I'll just move on here. I don't agree with the approach to the disagreement. So he knows better than any of us. He knows better than any of us combined that there are track records and legacies and lineages and generations of movements, individuals, collectives, movements, ideas, art that has said, man, voting isn't it. And it comes from a logical base. So to dismiss it as shut up because you don't understand, and then he references, he says intellectual warfare. And I believe, consciously or not, I could be projecting here, but given what I know about Carr, I believe he's making that unspoken reference to Baba Jake, to Jacob Carruthers, whose book Intellectual Warfare continues to be a giant and a monument of a document. But the intellectual warfare, I would argue, and that I think Baba Jake was arguing, is not at the level of we have to support democratic politicians and democratically appointed federal judges. It was, there is a state conscious white supremacist imperial design here. And at that level, the intellectual warfare, as I understand it, is to do just that. To say, if you are going to vote, if you are going to engage in politics, you have to do it on the basis of mainstream Democratic Party standards. Anything else is immature. That is the whole point of my argument about black capitalism, about buying power, about the after party. It's about resisting these attempts or these invitations to whiteness or invitations to a white political construct that says this is the only avenue. Supporting Biden and his appointed judges is the only avenue. Looking for more diversity in these appointments. And again, this is, look at the brilliance here. Carr is clear enough. I'm not going to be one of them silly Negroes to draw a line among our people over language. Because of course that's correct. But it's incorrect to suggest that Sotomayor in her position as a Supreme Court justice is in position to do what we need done, or that is the epitome or the gold standard for our engagement politically. That's what is so frustrating here for me. And again, the biggest part for me isn't that Dr. Carr takes this position. It's that Dr. Carr takes this position and with a hostility and disregard for these other traditions that I know he knows better than all of us put together and could make room for if he wasn't so desirous of being in that position, because that's the point. The structure, Roland Martin's structure, the Verizon brought to you by Verizon, the brought to you by McDonald's, the brought to you by all of that stuff. And we're going to come back to that in a second tier too. I got a lot more to get to this morning. So I'm hopefully I might make it. But that's that space that they've constructed can't have that. You can't have that. So whether it's a conscious choice or not, those ideas are not welcome there. So that's why you're not going to have discussions that are not hostile with people who would advocate a different approach to these discussions of federal appointed judges, et cetera, and so forth. So I want to come back and share here an excerpt from what I wrote in my response to our Blacklash Collective on this issue that was written in specific response to Dr. Carr last year, and that was meant initially for him to respond to and participate with us in our forum. He had been invited and for whatever reasons didn't, it doesn't matter, wasn't there. But my point is, and if it's not available in the show notes, it's at imixwhatilike.org, and I'll put it in the show notes as well, as is the whole forum, and as are the contributions of my colleagues and comrades in that group. So this was just my, but the point I was getting at is that with Carr, my point was you can make the argument without being disrespectful and volatile and dismissive of people who would raise criticisms, particularly that are coming from the Black grassroots or Black left. You could also teach eloquently with all the details and nuance and sophistication, all of these different tributaries of the Black historical experience here, and the lineages and the traditions and the generations that Carr himself talks about. So I know you could do this. But when Carr tells me on Twitter that political prisoners would probably appreciate, and we're going to come to that too. We got a couple to talk about before we leave this morning, would appreciate federally, democratically appointed federal judges. And when John Henrik Clarke would, I mean, it was wild. It was wild. So anyway, but the point I'm getting at is that another point that I'm getting at here is that and this was what I wanted him to respond to. It was referenced in that clip there, or later on in that discussion, that Dr. Carr has a law background. He teaches in Howard's Law School. So when I had found this argument a year or so ago from Samuel Moyne, the Yale law professor that I found very compelling regarding Supreme Court and federal judges. I wanted to hear this. These are the issues I would like to hear experts like Dr. Carr respond to without just telling people to shut up. As I highlighted here, Samuel Moyne's overarching point is and his whole thing is article is linked as well. So, you know, if I've misread it or haven't done it justice, I invite people to check it out, and I'm happy to, you know, whatever. But Moyne's overarching point is that liberal emphasis on these courts, that is Supreme and federal courts, both does not return the promises of that support. More importantly, walks us away from democracy and our ability to pass laws via Congress, which would offer and protect the rights we think can only be protected by an august judiciary. So my point there is that, not that I'm saying we should support the existing Congress as it's arranged and its politicians, That's not what I'm saying, because that
is wrong, bro.
And I'm here to.
I gotta talk to the people, son.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is what Moyne's point is. Overall, the emphasis on these judges has been encouraged by a state that wants to reduce democratic involvement and control by putting everything in the hands of these unelected judges. Society gives away too much of its own power. That's one of the points that he makes. So I'll skip that. So I just want to get to what he says here. So as I set up, for all the talk of defending a handful of gains or from preventing something worse, things have worsened or failed ever to really improve. And again, current patterns of voting have only seen material reality devolve from relative highs of a few decades ago, which coincided with an international and domestic revolutionary activity largely absent today. So quoting a bit at length from Moyne, and this is his point about, so he's saying all this focus on federal judges gives away authority that the people should have through elected officials. Then B, he's saying also historically, they haven't done anything. Federal judges, the Supreme Court included, have been given way too much credit for what they have been able to do for Black people and other so-called minorities and press groups in this country. They haven't done anything. So my point was, in my little preamble there, just simply the simple fact of the worsening material conditions is evidence of that. But as Moyne says, let me see if I can make it. Hold on a second. There we go. On race, to take the most romanticized accomplishment, school integration in South didn't genuinely begin until a full 10 years after the Supreme Court's landmark decision, Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, precisely because it ultimately required federal legislative action. And yet more than 60 years after Brown, apartheid is institutionalized functionally rather than formally. There are a mere 3 years of progress between 1964 and 1967 to show for those running victory laps for the judiciary. Distressingly, data shows that school integration in the North, achieved only partially there to begin with, has been even more undone. It would be lovely to rely on juristocrats if they patrolled the procedures of the democratic process itself, making sure winners could not lock in their gains by gaming the rules in elections. Surely the judicial affirmation in the United States of basic principles, since they are absent from the Constitution itself, that everyone's vote ought to be treated equally, is worth flagging. But the judiciary has never done much to reinforce the representation of racial minorities. Its more recent track record on this subject has been particularly abysmal. Then there is class. The drive for moderation of economic inequality was the central explanation for the Democratic victory of progressives under Roosevelt, and the success of their campaign essentially required judges to get out of the way. But even at the high tide of their political ascendancy, liberals couldn't get the Supreme Court to commit to distributive entitlements of any kind. Neither a welfare state or the least advantaged nor broader egalitarian justice in the country is there for even the most creative judges to find under the Constitution's authority, even assuming a transformed bench. In short, progressives have little to lose and much to gain by leaving juristocracy to the enemies of democracy. Abandoning judicial politics in a kind of unilateral disarmament may seem like a foolish move, but liberals have already lost the race for the heavy weaponry of judicial control of democracy, and they could advocate for the people more consistently and less hypocritically if they press their policies democratically. There is simply no way to restrict judicial activism to one's preferred causes any more than you can introduce a weapon in a fight with the guarantee that it will only hurt your enemies. Lately, the enthusiasm for judicial empowerment has taken the form of unseemly heroin worship with Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Sonia Sotomayor elevated to the status of secular saints. It is a kind of juristocratic feminism among legal elites to match the reigning neoliberal one among the professional class in general. But instead of merely reviling judges on the other side of the ideological divide while worshiping one's own, in a pantheon of angels and demons, any serious Democrat should reject, with a small d, he writes this, should reject the religion of the judiciary itself. Other liberals trying to get through a dark night are clinging to the hope that, cajoled by strategic genius Elena Kagan, John Roberts might track to the center in a few crucial cases. The truth is that the prospect of a centrist coalition is more of an anxious fantasy than a political opportunity. Even if it works, it is a distinct improvement on full-scale reaction at the Supreme Court. Let me read that again. Even if it works, it is a distinct improvement on full-scale reaction at the Supreme Court in the same way that a chronic disease is better than a terminal diagnosis. Wow. Many reform schemes circle around restoring partisan equilibrium and undergirding the legitimacy of the institution that right-wing hijinks have eroded. That approach would be less embarrassing had liberals not spent generations ceding reform arguments like the democratic premise itself to the right in their zeal to present the Supreme Court as a legitimate source of rule as long as they controlled it. Yet the real problem with the liberal cause is not really that it lost control of judicial power, of the judicial power it built, but that it built it in the first place. End quote. That's more akin to where I want us to be going. He's saying, as I interpret it, we shouldn't even want these judges to have power like that in the first place. We should want direct democratic involvement over the decisions that we leave up to them and hope that they'll get right, or hope some president will appoint in the right way, or hope that that appointee will be manipulated in the right way at this crucial point, blah, 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 blah. And then, even if all of that does happen, it still requires Congress to get involved to actually make what they claim should happen take place. So instead of telling us to shut up, instead of telling people to not think outside of the Democratic Party box, I think what is needed is some encouragement and inducement to do more of that. To be more involved, more radically and militantly involved in the public policy that is imposed on us. And when we just sit back and say, man, even in the kind of progressive way that Carr is doing, man, she might speak Spanish, but her mom is kind of black. Well, at least that other sister got one black parent. At least we can finally say we got the first black woman on that Supreme Court. It's 2022. We're not encouraging more involvement in not only those decisions, but in the decisions that those people make. We don't care about their politics. We don't care about what they could actually do when they get there. We don't care about what we give up, because that's what I read in Moyne's point, that we give up more by putting all of this, following that liberal inducement. to say, man, no, because the Supreme Court can do some good. The Democratic Party can do some good. These folks can do some good. It'll be a little bit better. Moyne is saying, so, okay, cool. So you won't get the terminal diagnosis, but you'll get the permanent disease and illness. That's not acceptable to me. That's just not acceptable. I reject that as my only options. And that's why I want the after party. And that's why I would like us to be more critically engaged in these discussions and to be doing them in different ways. So I just made a quick list of what we don't get despite having a Black woman in the Supreme Court, because this is what Biden has not done. So while he's being given credit for nominating the most diverse array of nominees since John F. Kennedy, why are we going back to 1963 standards for what is acceptable for our political condition and those who claim to be representing us and those for whom we should be voting? So here's just a quick list, and I know many of you can come up with more and more detail. This is what we do not get despite a Black woman Supreme Court justice: universal health care, student debt forgiveness, COVID recovery payments, an end of war, defunding of the police and the military, regulation of big tech, regulation of Wall Street, an end to AFRICOM, full employment, housing protections and full housing, real engagement environmental policy, release of political prisoners, even including Julian Assange, and a Flint water cleanup. That's just a quick list of things that we don't get while we get the first Black woman nominated or appointed to the Supreme Court. So I guess that's a big congratulations to us. All right, quick break, come back and get to some more stuff here before I think we might make it. Let's keep going. Let's keep it going here. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. All right, let's have a little bit of fun since the computer hasn't died yet. All of this to me is there's a running theme here. So we started with this discussion of the rap world, and where I just disagree with this idea that the generation has ever been in position to fully defend it. We've never been in position to defend it. It emerged, you know, as at the tail end of the full crushing of the most radical expression of our of our politics at the time. It's been commercially and you know, captive of capital and capitalism and colonialism ever since. So for all the great art and wondrous beauty it has produced, the billions that it has produced haven't changed the material conditions of the Black community. And as we started the show off with, those conditions are getting worse. So all that said, I did go back and find, watch a conversation that I had been meaning to get to for a long time and finally got to it the other day. They have certainly stepped up the quality of their production since then, although this was just earlier last year, in a conversation with one of my favorite MCs of all time, Mad Skillz. If any of you are not hip hop aficionados or of a certain generation, Mad Skillz, hailing from Virginia, is one of the best MCs and lyricists ever. It's just that most of his great lines have been mouthed by others since for a better part of his professional career, he's been ghostwriting. And that's a little bit of what I wanted to play in this excerpt here. Listen to what he says about the differences between then and now in terms of the hip hop community. And I think it's very interesting, all going back to this question, starting with this question of ghostwriting.
But my thing is, and I write, you know, I started with hip hop, but shit, I done done like fucking, you know, R&B records, pop records. So after a while, it's like, I might reference the whole thing, but then just leave something for the artist if they want to hop in. Right. You know what I'm saying?
To make it their own.
And make it their own. Like leave the bridge open, leave the second verse open. You know what I'm saying?
What did you think? Sorry, I'll cut you off. I'm going right back to this. What did you think about when you heard Drake reference tracks?
It was bound to happen sooner or later.
What do you mean by that?
Like they was going to come out. You know what I'm saying? Like, because at the end of the day, niggas like us, we cared. In 97, 98, we gave a fuck. And nigga, if you tell me Rakim didn't write Microphone Fee, I'm knocking all this shit the fuck off.
Say that like that,
exactly.
Like,
you see how blasphemy it is?
Yeah.
But these kids today, like, they don't fucking care. Like, niggas don't even have a proper place to go look to find the credits.
Does that matter? Does it matter?
A hit record matters. A hit record matters.
So that was just that little clip I wanted to play. I didn't like the audio quality of that interview. I hated that they had him on a bad, because I love that show. I love the Drink Champs. I would love to hang out at a Drink Champs. I wish I had these are the times I wish I did a different career so I could be in position to be in that room. But the point though, and I hope it was clear enough in that little clip, but the point was that nobody cares anymore about getting lyrics written for them. When I was coming up, there was this. So when Puffy said, "I don't write rhymes, I write checks," everybody was like, "Cool, we don't expect you to write rhymes." But like he said, if somebody had come out and said Rakim had somebody writing there, I would have flipped over some tables too. I'd have been mad as hell. But nowadays, people don't care. Drake doesn't write his rhymes. I don't care. So-and-so didn't write their rhymes. I don't care. So the Kanye doesn't write his rhymes. I don't care. And I just find that fascinating. That was really it. I find it fascinating and part of really the thread here would just political thread would just be that this is part of the whole point. It has never mattered. The art has to the colonial apparatus, to the capitalist world, the art has the quality has never mattered. The fact that some of us gave a damn about lyricism and who wrote their own lyrics, like he tells a story. Like when I bought a CD that people don't, and I put it in, I want to hear what I think is your true expression. And to find out later that a lot of it was studio gangsters and written, or concocted, where, even from the beginning, Sylvia Robinson is putting, rappers giving one dude someone else's name and lyrics and putting them in the Sugar Hill game. I mean, so from jump, it's created as this fabrication. That when I found that out, that bothered me. That hurt. It kind of hurts to this day. But the apparatus doesn't care. The apparatus wants hits, because what comes with hits, aside from the money, comes the ability to limit people's consciousness, to infuse certain messages, to create stars who can be brought back later to distract or lead people in Black capitalist regressive directions. But anyway, now, so that was it. Let's take a quick break, and then I got some more fun I want us to have.
No way, shape, or
coming from. Let's take a quick break. More hip hop and some more fun, but also more after party.
I mix what I like.
All right, again, good people, I really appreciate you all sticking around and rocking with us this long. I appreciate my computer rocking with us this long. Shout out to Josh holding it down, and all of you in the chat that I see is booming, even though I'm not seeing what's the specific content. So just very quickly, please do hit that like, share, and subscribe button. We got big projects coming here on the platform. Don't let my silliness or tech complaints, distract from that reality. Please do, if you have an HBCU experience, check out imixwhatilike.org and participate in the Not a Different World project. And then also check the new Discord that we set up for this program as well. I'll drop the link in the chat again, and I think it's in the show notes, or it will be in the show notes shortly. But anyway, so I want to check this. I didn't know that this thing even existed. I don't know I don't know any of the background of any of this. I don't know what nefarious nonsense might be behind this. I don't know anything, but what I saw here relates so well to this whole thread we have going this morning of contradictions, hip hop, the after party, where we are with the mainstream. And in this episode of from Defiant Digital of Cancel Court. They debate in freestyle fashion the value of the Democratic Party. So let's check this out.
Form does the prosecution fuck with Donald Trump in any capacity? Just get that clear. I don't know how we got pigeonholed into the idea that not fucking with the Democrats mean that we endorse Trump, but that's not the case at all. But I want to remind the court of something. For those of you who are old enough to remember this, this should be a treat. Remember the Pepsi challenge? Yeah. Pepsi Coke. Which one tastes better? Pepsi Coke. You know, your mama has some big ass glasses on. Y'all went to Blockbuster and she got a 2-liter Pepsi, 2-liter Coke. She's always gonna do the Pepsi challenge at home. Some people benefited, had good parties. You know, some people got rich. Mainly Pepsi and Coke both got rich. They sat back and laughed because they had created a frenzy. You had to choose Pepsi or Coke. Pepsi or Coke, because that's the challenge. It's Pepsi or Coke. It's Pepsi or Coke. Where the fuck was the water? Where the fuck was the water? Nigga, no juice? No apple juice? No nothing? Pepsi, Coke. They got you so up into a fucking frenzy that you forgot that there's other fucking drinks besides Pepsi and Coke. Both of them making you fat. Both of them killing you. And guess what? When they start realizing, hey, everybody's getting fat as fuck off these Pepsis and Cokes, Pepsi and Coke already had it ready. Diet Pepsi, Diet Coke, bam! That's what the fuck the Democratic Party is. Diet Coke. They already had it ready. They already had it prepared. You don't vote for us, you ain't black. Do, bitch. I like to question shit. When I was a kid, I was like, what part of the animal is the hot dog? What perfect sausage is in a fucking animal? And my mom said, no, this is a combination of a bunch of different animals. And I said, what the fuck? It's like, you gotta question the ingredients sometimes and stop letting motherfuckers just give you anything. In my opinion, the Democratic Party is giving us anything. And if we don't challenge it, to be like, hey, y'all aren't doing enough of the shit that y'all say that y'all are gonna do. And that's okay to do. If we don't challenge it and be like, hey, if there's another party that possibly want to step up, Bernie Sanders had his own little nursing home party we could have went to. They had bingo, they had that little thing you slide down and people doing this in front of the thing. Republican and Democrats, they rest their hat on that. Who you gonna fuck with? Say that to your girl. If it ain't me, who you gonna fuck with? She go, oh. I'll find a date. That's not enough. And I feel like I'm not the only person who feels like that's not enough for our people. We are a changing society. Nothing is as uniform as it was in 1838 when they decided we needed to have these two parties. I don't rest my case, but I chill for right now.
So quick correction. Obviously, I got my own clips confused. This was not a freestyle battle. It was I meant to say improv, comedic improv. So apparently all of that is improvised, and they do a variety of episodes of this on various on different topics, and they have an improv comedic debate. And I love what he said there, more or less. The Bernie Sanders piece, I think he missed the point a little bit there. There are a bunch of other contradictions in that clip, but the point I think still is well taken, that we've been given the Pepsi challenge of politics. And I want the after party to be the water. Oh, there's so many good. Get in the water. The original waters of noon. Oh, come on. That's it. So anyway, I really appreciated it. That was it. That was great. All right, so that was it. So let me take one more quick break, and then I got some odds and ends to get to, some stuff on political prisoners, and then we can get out of here. And I really appreciate you. Back in a quick
second. I mix what I like.
So before we get to the political prisoner stuff, there were a couple of more pieces just quickly on the issue of Black capitalism and buying power, and that I wanted to cover very quickly. One of them is related to this story here. One of the, well, I'll put it this way, I guess. I don't know if I just got this story sent to me the other day about what has happened at the root, and it is fascinating. It is fascinating. The short of it for me is that, and I will get to a couple highlights here, but what I think that this story points to is that the colonial relationship, the capitalist world, looks at Black media let's see. Let me just, I'll come back to, let me just do it this way. What the story highlights are all these firings and people leaving the root. All the big names apparently have left in what has been a takeover by Geo Media, who bought the root and who also owns Gawker. Did it say they bought Gawker as well? I think Gawker had some sort of but the point is the point here is that the firewall, as they say here, the firewall between editorial and advertising, for example, seemed to be breaking down. And that was the old problem within commercial journalism, is what is supposed to be this firewall between the advertising and editorial decision and the editorial decision making of the outlet. And as is often the case, as is always the case, the advertising interests dominate. So from the perspective of my buying power argument, this is sort of the point. This is why the root was one of my sources for all the failures of reporting on the myth of buying power. This is why I think the root and other outlets like it don't cover my work or work similarly situated, because the advertising that drives the content, that drives the decision of all commercial media, all of it, including YouTube, which even impacts my own and our discussion here. So I'm not claiming we are somehow above and beyond it. We're differently situated and have a different relationship with that advertising, definitely. In that we don't get any or get much, and we are not certainly sponsored in the way that these folks are. But the algorithm, the advertising, and certainly the threat of being editorially removed because the advertisers are upset, that threat is real and has an impact, I think, on me and us as a platform. But clearly it had gotten to the point here where folks couldn't had to leave. So it wasn't sponsored content, Michael Harriot, one of the bigger names that left, said, but advertising was driving the content. The Geo Media spokesperson said their Tulsa coverage had not been sponsored. They had previously in the article talked about, or in that same paragraph, even talked about the coverage of the Tulsa Massacre Centennial. At times it verged on absurd. For Mother's and Father's Day, they sold Pete, that is the root, sold Pete, and Geo Media's advertising or marketing department sold pieces to a liquor company. The root sold pieces to a liquor company, but because it was liquor, the corresponding articles couldn't reference children. We had to write all these Mother's Day pieces without talking about kids, one editor said. Asked about Mother's and Father's Day sponsors, the Geo Media spokesperson said no comment. As one ex-writer explained, I say this very curtly, but I don't mean it in this way. With the death of George Floyd, there was a huge push in every market from every company that didn't want to look like they weren't supporting Black issues. What the root got in direct connection to that was a huge windfall of money. Everyone wanted to advertise with us because they knew we were a Black site that was doing something that was popular with the Black community. It didn't mean they read us. It didn't mean that they weren't truly supportive of our mission, but they wanted on record that they spent advertising dollars with us. As far as we knew, we were the only profitable site. We were the site that was actually funding a lot of other sites. That was one of the issues. The Root had been a favorite of marketers over the past 2 years since the killing of George Floyd. That is how the state and its psychological warfare wing, or marketing, advertising, public relations, strategic communication, mass communication, propaganda wing, the arm of the state, that's how they look at these issues. So there's something bad that happens to the Black community. The Black community is going to want news and coverage on it. So we will either create, support, fund, manage the content of Black outlets for the benefit financially, and also the benefit unconsciously or unspoken of managing the conversation and the analysis given about those incidents. That's how they engage. So on the one hand, I mean, it's, you know, I have to admit, it's like, I feel bad that that individuals at the Root felt this way. But on the other hand, this is, to me, when I read this, it's like reading, like if an actor walked off the set of a Tyler Perry film. If they got mad, if they got mad at Tyler Perry and did this. That's how I feel. Like that's how I, you know, that's how I feel about this. You know, like you know, in one meeting, sources recalled DeLuca suggesting an interview with Kevin Samuels. DeLuca was one of the replacements imposed, I believe. Kevin Samuels, the male image consultant turned YouTube dating influencer, who most of the staff considered a misogynist. Some of his recent episodes included Modern Women Want to Be Trophy Wives, Are Modern Women Lazy Daters, and Are Modern Women in Deep Trouble. DeLuca says she did not recall the suggestion, but this is just one of the tensions that led to the blowout. What else did I have here? What else did I have here? Let me see. Favorite of marketers. Yeah. That might have been it. Yeah, I think that was it. That was it. But yeah, so anyway, anyway, this is how Black media, this is how Black commercial media, or Black, which again means not necessarily Black owned, but because the Root at this point is not Black owned, but media that is commercial and targets Black audiences, or employs Black, well, not just necessarily employees, but targets Black audiences, or you know, with a specific kind of content. But they are there as commercial outlets, beholden to advertising and the whims and the directions and the politics of the advertisers. That's, you know, and as such, this is what can happen. This is, you know. So anyway, I mostly wanted to point out the fact that the advertising relationship to Black trauma was, you know. All right, so somewhat related, but back on just a little of some recent claims about buying power that came from actually the end of last year. But I think just very quickly, not just about the dollars, why building wealth is about more than money, and how Black America can close the gap. Black Americans are estimated to have more than $1 trillion in buying power in coming years, making the highest amount of spendable cash they've ever wielded in the U.S. Now, this article does something very interesting, and then I'm connected to this news thing I just saw last night. But it does something very interesting here, kind of to the point I'm getting at about how it's becoming a more sophisticated and nuanced discussion of these issues. Still, All that money, it says here, won't necessarily translate into an opportunity to build wealth, experts told Finura, adding that building wealth isn't solely about having dollars to spend year after year. It's going to take sweeping federal policy combined with Black Americans investing in themselves in order to truly close the Black wealth gap, according to experts. I thought that was interesting because that's exactly right. It is going to take. Yeah, this is why I have this here. So just make a quick mental note that of this reference to McKinsey. A McKinsey study recently released in early December 2021 predicts that Black America's buying power will grow to 1.7 trillion by 2030, up from 910 billion in 2019. Black consumers are a critical part of the US economy now and will continue to be in coming years, McKinsey researchers said. Now, as I've talked about McKinsey before, we're going to come back to them because there's something new just came out that I didn't know about. Because remember I talked earlier this year about dope sick. All right. Uh-oh. Am I running out here? It looks like I'm fading here. But in my previous discussion in reference to McKinsey, it is that they make this point. One, they follow up on the claim using the same metrics that is a reference to either Nielsen or the Selig Center for this claim, but that also that they accurately make the point that the real value of buying power is to the U.S. economy, not to the Black community. To place that figure into perspective, 1.7 trillion is about the gross domestic product of Mexico, according to McKinsey researchers. So they do the same thing with the myth, and we've debunked this already. One, buying power is not the same as GDP, and two, GDP is not a measurement of inequality within a given society, and it's not a measurement of economic strength, certainly of oppressed communities in a given society. I think I am freezing up here. Is that true? Am I freezing up? Because I think my computer is in fact on it is fading out. Yeah, slightly freezing. Yeah. All right, let me see if I can make it through this. Yeah, maybe not. All right, let me stop this and see if I can just get out of here. Just continuing from that same article, which is linked in the show notes, I believe already. Experts said today's massive wealth gap between Black and white Americans has less to do with what Black people have spent their money on and more to do with the ways the federal government has allowed wealth to be siphoned from Black neighborhoods. The 1921 Tulsa massacre of Black Wall Street, almost 40 years of redlining policies and little access to startup capital for today's Black businesses are recent reasons why there is a gap, experts say. So, I mean, I think they throw that in there, but then everything else comes back to Black businesses getting support and Black entrepreneurialism and even as they say here, Black Americans spend more money on consumer items like cooking oil, gum, beauty aids, and women's fragrances, according to who? 2018 data from Nielsen. Because why? Because Nielsen is measuring people's spending habits, not their economic strength. And why are Black people spending money on cooking oil, gum, beauty aids, and women's fragrances? Because as Frantz Fanon said years ago, that's what colonized people have access to, the colonial trinkets. So to suggest, as I think the article does tacitly, that Black people could spend more frugally or with greater financial literacy and be better off, that's part of the mythology that remains rampant here. But all right, man, this was and we got to do the political prisoner thing too. So I'm gonna try this.
So you're McKinsey in the early two.
So you're McKinsey in the. I encourage people check it, and I'm just gonna play the very beginning of this video and hope we can make it through, because remember I talked about dope sick. and the opioid crisis earlier this year. Just check out this new video. McKinsey, the company that poisoned America.
So you're McKinsey in the early 2000s. You're a ruthless consulting firm who puts sales and capital above all else. And you've just found the perfect client, Purdue Pharma. Purdue sells one of the world's most addictive and profitable products, opioid drugs, like OxyContin. Imagine getting to sell basically the equivalent of heroin legally. That is the business Purdue was in, and McKinsey had just been hired to boost their sales. It was a match made in heaven. Both you and Purdue will do anything to make an extra buck, so you set out on a disinformation and sales campaign unlike any other. You sell people drugs you know will kill them eventually?
McKinsey advised Purdue how to avoid FDA and pharmacy restrictions because McKinsey knew that people were overdosing and dying and getting sick from OxyContin.
You sell them so well that over the next 2 decades, hundreds of thousands of people die from opioid overdoses. And because of that, Purdue's sales go up and you get your consulting fees. Your client sells drugs and profits off of people getting addicted to them, just like a drug dealer. Except drug dealers go to prison. But because you're a well-connected corporation, you just need to issue an apology and get away with just a $600 million fine when you make over $10 billion a year. A national health crisis, billions in taxpayer dollars to set up rehabs, the alleged indirect killing of thousands of people, and the worst you get is a glorified "please don't do this again"? This is McKinsey, the most evil consulting firm in the world, and this is how they pull it off.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
Oh, I'm muted again. Why was I muted there? My bad. All right. Yeah, anyway. All right, let me just say again, want to encourage people to check this full story below in the show notes and show some support for Sundiata, make some noise to try to get him paroled. I believe he has, again, another hearing today, tomorrow, this week. Definitely want to follow up on that. And the story here, I mean, I did read the whole thing. It's long, but it's just a reminder of, again, of what he is accused of having done, what he did do, the state's response, their attempts to, of course, not let him be known about, to not let him be freed, to deny him parole despite his stellar record, and to never forget the fact that he is a comrade of Assata Shakur and a participant in a struggle that not only deserves to be remembered and honored, but deserves to be picked up and extended going forward. So definitely want to encourage that people continue to show support for Brother Sundiata Acoli. We have a number of videos up about him. You can check if you want, but we also, more importantly, have links, I believe, already in the show notes that are, but if not there, we'll share them elsewhere, that will allow anyone interested who hasn't already to get more involved in supporting his release. Somewhat similarly, there is news also recently reported that another long-time held political prisoner, Leonard Peltier, remains not only locked up, but has been diagnosed with COVID. So he needs to have his freedom ramped up to now. So I'll make sure that this is in the show notes as well, but that is whoisleonardpeltier.info is the website, which includes a lot of information and history. And then, of course, links to where you can show some support for not only his release, but also specifically that he be given care, well, released to be given care for having contracted COVID. So we wish him a speedy recovery and an immediate freedom, you know? So anyway, all right, good people. I don't know if there are were there any questions or comments that I could get to right now that could be brought up? I don't know. We've been here for a long time. I really appreciate everybody hanging out this morning. Please do check all the show notes going forward. A big thanks again to Josh as well for helping out all morning. Sister Aaliyah for being involved as well. Please do check out the Discord and continue everything over there. I'll put the link. I think that's already there, but I'll make sure the link gets put in the show notes for that as well. The HBCU project at imixwhatilike.org. We'd love to hear from you on that as that project continues on as well. But again, thanks to everybody, Josh, everybody, for coming out. I appreciate you all. Everybody out here in the chat, Leah, Ricky, KD, Black Magic, all of you. I appreciate everybody. So Leah, see you all out there. So, but I think that's it. Back tomorrow morning. Well, I won't be, but the Remix Morning Show is back tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and all week. I'll be back on Friday. And of course, Friday after the show, I'll be debating the Gentlemen of Crypto on their platform a little after 10 a.m. Friday morning. And to Brooke, who had a criticism in the comments about it, there was no crypto talk today, but I do think it's relevant and important and connected to a lot of the work that I do and have been interested in over the years, particularly the media messaging and reporting around the Black economic condition and what could be done about it. But I see you. I appreciate that. What happened with the ear doctor? The show didn't go off last night? I don't know. I'm not sure what happened. Is that what the situation was? So, well, I don't know. We'll see. I appreciate that, Ricky. Thank you very much. Keep working with the technical issues, everybody. It was on last night. Please understand, I am taking this seriously and trying to make it a little bit better here, a little bit hotter for the people. And I'm trying to figure out all these tech issues. So I appreciate you all working with me. Scam economy. Ooh. All right. Yeah, please send the link too if you got one. Yeah, definitely. All right. All right, everybody. Let me go ahead and get on out of here. Please do check out the Discord and let me know if I set that up right and if it can be of use, because I'd love to see these conversations continue on. But as always, if we didn't get to something or if I missed something,
put it in the comments.
And we'll continue to keep on rocking here at our Mix I Like and Black Power Media. So again, thanks to everybody for coming through. Thanks again to Josh. Peace if you're willing to fight for it, like I know you are, like Fred Hampton used to tell us to do. See you tomorrow morning, everybody. Thanks again.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.